Good evening and welcome to January 5th, 2022 Select Board meeting. This is our first regular Select Board meeting of the year, and welcome. In accordance with the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A, subsection 20, all public meetings are now being conducted remotely. Following these requirements of the Open Meeting Law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by WACA-TV. The town of Ashland is in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Ashland Board of Health, the Mass Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Tonight's Zoom meeting ID number is 825-8274-5664, and the passcode is 802721. If you wish to listen and participate in the meeting. So with that, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I open this meeting at 7:08 p.m. With that, I will open it up for citizens' participation. Good evening, Mark. I see your hand raised.
Good evening. Happy New Year to all, and to all the other members of the multi-boards that have joined the call. How's everybody doing?
I think we're all doing fine, Mark.
I would like to thank the town for a very healthy, nice end of the year. And I know the agenda that's on tonight is going to put a little crimp into it, but it's going to be a great discussion. It's about COVID. I understand that. The Board of Health had a great discussion last night about how it was and what they're going to be talking about and go through the issues. And I hope the rest of the boards listen carefully, understand that it's for the town's good, not just a department good, but the town and citizens going to have to hear this and be real careful and understood that it's family that keeps the health together. And so you want to keep your health together so you won't unhealth the family members. Other than that, my dad is okay. He's sleeping right now. It's all healthy, wealthy. And all the friends I have here is the very wealthy part still that starts the new year off right. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else for citizens' participation? I see we have quite a few folks here. I know some of them with the Board of Health, but if there's anybody else who would like to.
Hey, Joe, I'll step in.
Okay, thank you,
All
Amy.
right.
How are you?
Hang on just a second here. I'm just trying to fix my screen. There we go. So my name is Amy Childs. I've been on a few of these meetings now. So I'm a nurse practitioner, and I've been working intermittently with Sergeant Berman on contact tracing and case management since he was appointed to the COVID management position he's been in since April of 2020. I'm asking today to reinstate Sergeant Berman to full-time hours effective immediately within the town of Ashland Board of Health. I feel like maybe sometimes his role isn't well understood aside from those who are acutely involved in COVID case management, as this position demands endless attention 7 days a week. This week alone, we've had 293 cases assigned to our Board of Health, which doesn't include the independently reported home tests that are flying in. Regardless of the severity of the case, Sergeant Berman is solely responsible for speaking directly to them or delegating to one of the 3 additional contact tracers who have very limited availability. Many times, these cases will continue to call or text us throughout the day, well into the evening, seeking our professional advice. And recently, we lost the assistance of the state-run CTC, which is the Contact Tracing Collaborative, who was doing some of our contact tracing. So now 100% of that is occurring with very limited town resources, which largely fall into Sergeant Berman. Outside of contact tracing, on a usual day by 6 a.m., he's conducting our school nurse team, contacting our school nurse team of cases that have come in overnight to begin the efforts of guiding those families. He then contacts our police and fire department of cases to be aware of in the event that emergencies occur in those homes. He manages the ongoing outbreaks within our various nursing homes and daycares, and for our vaccine clinics, he was the one who single-handedly sought out nursing student volunteers from local colleges that drew up and administered vaccine He researched and selected the program we were using to sign up and document administrations. He orchestrated the unique experience of the therapy dogs and collaborated with Holliston to run one of the largest and most efficient pediatric vaccine clinics to date. He's also our sole point of contact within the DPH, CDC, and other local boards of health regarding COVID, and has become a public health resource well outside of Ashland, bolstering our name in the public health realm in Massachusetts. Actually, a public health nurse from a neighboring town wrote to me earlier today to say, and I quote, "Ashland cannot afford to lose any time with Ed. He is incredible, and his vast experience as a smart, forward thinker who also has valuable relationships with surrounding towns and with the public health world in general. There is simply no one as well equipped as him to perform this job to the level at which he does." So with that being said, I feel that reducing his hours to perform all of these tasks in a smaller window of time is hurtful to a man who has worked well in excess of full-time over the last 3 years to our benefit. Truthfully, his job is that of which is performed by 5 public health nurses in a neighboring town of a similar population size. And I just want to reiterate that. His job in another town is performed by 5 public health nurses. Anytime Ashland loses with Sergeant Berman, especially in the wake of the current surge, is an enormous detriment to all citizens and businesses of our town. So I'm asking that you please reconsider the transition of roles and reinstate Sergeant Berman full-time to COVID management in Ashland. That's it.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other participants for citizens participation at this time?
Hey, Joe, I'll go.
Go ahead, Edwin. Yeah.
It's the same topic, and I'll take it from a slightly different perspective. But I want to echo what Amy Child said. Joe, whenever we have Ashland Day again and they have Ashland Citizen of the Year, Ed deserves it for the next 5 because he has been that critical to our town. One of the things that Amy touched on was his coordination with the school nurses. And what I would like the board and Michael to consider is that the mental health of these nurses, having been strained now for essentially 2 years and now losing the support of Ed, he literally has gone to schools and yanked kids off of buses as their positive test results have come in when their parents have put them on the bus. So not having that on a daily basis is increasing the workload, increasing the stress levels and burnout in our nursing staff and within the schools. He has a level of professionalism and coordination that, again, what Amy said, it's taking 5 people in another town to do this role. And I can't imagine that in a year looking at local crime rates, when they have been dropping throughout this pandemic, that his police hours are that necessary when the loss of potential life, mental health, school closures, and testing capabilities for our employees within the schools will be compromised without him. So I, like Amy, am here to advocate for Ed Berman being fully reinstated to his role as COVID coordinator.
Thank you, Warren. I appreciate your comments. With that, if there are no other participants or citizens participation, we'll go directly into, I'll give somebody a second or two. I don't see anybody raising their hand for it.
Mr. Chair, just a procedural question. So
Sure.
are we going to discuss this question tonight? And if so, when? Are we doing it with the Board of Health or later on
Well,
the COVID update?
That's a good question. That's we have a scheduled hearing or meeting at 7:15 with joint discussion with the Board of Health regarding a mask mandate. But I'm sure that's a topic that could be brought up via the Board of Health. We could do that tonight if we deem necessary. If it's a topic that everyone feels is of greater importance, we can push things back with respect to the agenda, as long as people have a better understanding or an understanding that we have other agenda items that need to be discussed as well. But this is a topic that I'm sure everybody feels is kind of important right now, especially with the numbers, peaking and rising and not going in the opposite direction. So I'll do it that way. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm happy to address, some of the comments that are made and explain some of the rationale, because I think there's been some misinformation. that's been going around.
Do you want to do it now or do you want to do it during the joint discussion?
I'm happy to do it now.
Okay. All right.
In relation to that, if it's okay with everybody. So Aaron and Amy, thank you for jumping on and providing comments. And, I really appreciate the work that you all have done, both as a school committee member and helping us with our COVID efforts, over the last 2 years as well. So just to be very clear, I am the one who made the decision to assign Ed back to patrol a couple of shifts per week. And I made that decision for a number of reasons. But before I get into those, I want to be very, very clear that my decision was not based on Ed's performance or any kind of lack of performance. I think, Amy, you said it best. Ed does the job of 5 people. Sometimes I think it's 6 or 7. He does an incredible amount of work for us. He works tirelessly. I mean, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job for him. He does incredible work, and I would echo a lot of the sentiments that have been expressed, that a lot of the things that we have been able to do over the last couple of years, we would not have been able to do without Ed at the helm. And that was I knew we needed somebody of Ed's skills when I made that appointment back in 2020. And I know a lot of people looked at me sideways. Why are you appointing a police sergeant to this role? And I said, trust me. And I think that decision was the right decision. And I think over the last couple of years, that's been proven. In addition to, we're all swamped with COVID and we're all immersed in COVID. That's our lives. But just as the schools have a lot to do, I mean, they've got the school department and all the aspects of that have to be run. I also have to factor into all the departments, the health and safety of all the departments and the town as a whole. At this point in time, we have, so let me first back up. Back in 2020, when we made the decision to appoint Ed, that was a pretty protracted negotiation with the union because they needed him on duty at that time, but they were willing to do that. And I think initially we had set it up for maybe a 2-month period. Unfortunately, that has extended as this pandemic has extended. But I want to just give you an understanding of what some of our officers are going through because we don't have enough manpower. So we have a number of shifts that have to be covered through forced overtime. So that means you don't have a choice whether or not you work OT. You have to work it. There's just no other choice. And you have situations where we have people who are supposed to end their shift at 3 and they're scheduled to get their daughter at 3:15 from Pitaway. And, 20 minutes before their shift ends, somebody has to call out sick. And so that person needs to work the 3 to 11 shift as well. So can you imagine being in that position where now you're scrambling to figure out, okay, who's going to take care of my child? How am I going to manage this? How am I going to manage the other things that I'm supposed to do? Just basic life things that have to happen. You do that, can you imagine that scenario happening? And that scenario happens quite a bit. It's happened quite a bit. In fact, over the last 6 months alone, 58 shifts have had to be filled through forced overtime. And that was before we had this recent rash of COVID. We were 5 officers down going into last week. I had 4 officers test positive. We need Ed to cover some parts of patrol, but not all of it. So I want to be very, very clear. He has not been reassigned totally to patrol. He's still doing COVID work. And from my understanding, he has basically done everything that the school department has asked him and what other people have asked him related to COVID, even up until to this day. We've checked in every day. I think coming back from the holiday, I know Ed and Audrey worked basically throughout the day to go through the COVID cases and go through the contact tracing. I don't think any teacher or staff member has been turned away for testing. over the past 3 days. I think we've tested 25 people on Monday. I think we tested 22 people in the last couple of days each. So I have not necessarily seen that negative impact that people are afraid is going to happen. I think, unfortunately, a lot of communities are having to redistribute resources. Maybe we can't do the contact tracing that we have been. Framingham Public Schools just issued a notice saying that they're shifting their resources from test and stay and contact tracing to more pool testing today. So, we're all kind of juggling. It's a juggling act here, and we're trying to, make sure that we can address everything that we can with the resources that we have. So, in just concluding this, I just want to summarize again, this has nothing to do with Ed's performance. This has everything to do with our police personnel and having enough police on the streets so that the town is safe and our other officers are safe. And we're still committed to giving all of our departments, including the school department, the resources that they need to, hopefully keep kids in school.
Like, could I just jump in and ask a question? I don't know if I can go back and make another statement. Is that?
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. So I completely understand what you're saying. By no means do I think it's a reflection of Sergeant Berman's performance, but echoing the same sentiment of, there's not enough officers to cover the streets. I'm a nurse and we're dealing with the same thing. We have the National Guard coming in to fill in our gaps. Who's filling in the gap for Ed if he's not there? I've been in the office plenty of times when the phone is just ringing incessantly. And it's not only Ashland, it's other, towns that are calling in for these resources. So I'm just concerned, what does he walk back into? Because everybody knows Ed's work ethic is incomparable, that you give him 4 hours to perform a 40-hour job and he's going to do it. But I mean, at what expense to the one individual who's been assigned to do this? So I guess my concern is, who's his backup? Who's he going to be able to work with? And also, I know that you mentioned the pool testing that Framingham and multiple other communities are doing. And as they shift into this other kind of mode, because I do agree, contact tracing has shifted significantly since I was last involved. We're no longer calling the individual case and saying, who have you been with? We'll call them and giving individual guidance. It's more so, calling to say, here's the isolation, here's what you should tell your contacts, call us for any additional assistance. So we've definitely shifted. Do you anticipate that there will be a shift in how the town kind of collectively addresses COVID cases, maybe our own pool testing, to better account for these cases that they come in and not have it hinging on one person in particular?
Yeah, Amy, I think that's a good point. I think, if you look back over the last 2 years, maybe one of the things that I should have done is probably spread the load a little bit and not have depended just on Ed. And fortunately, we've had people such as yourself and Isabel Perez and others who have stepped up and helped us with some of those efforts. But I do want to point out, we also have a public health director who is involved in this. Now, Raj has to deal with a lot of other public health related issues, just things like septic systems and food inspections and everything like that. And we have a part-time public health nurse. I will say that we talked today about Ed, Raj, myself, and Jen. We talked today about putting even more resources into this. Maybe if we're going to do contact tracing, maybe we hire a company to do that, which is being done in a lot of communities, contracting out a firm. I'm not averse to putting more resources into it.
Perfect. I mean, that's my main concern. So, like I said, that neighboring town, they have 5 public health nurses just to cover COVID. So it was really eye-opening that, it has been myself, Isabel, Nancy at times too. It's an enormous effort for a town of 17,000 people where you're trying, you just can't catch up. So, I mean, the reverse 911 call was helpful. Trying to get that information out there, but it just feels like we're already working from behind. So then to take away that much more time creates a huge deficit for the public health spectrum within Ashland and our efforts to keep everything open and running as usual.
Yeah. And part of my job, Amy, is so trying to balance everything and seeing where we can pull from different resources. So like with COVID, and if we talk specifically about contact tracing, I have the ability to maybe contract out with a firm, or hire different personnel to help fill in some of that gap. Whereas on the police side, I can't pull people, you know, there's specialized positions. They have to go through an academy. They have to be qualified. They have to, have gone through all of that. And that is a process. I can't just go immediately and pick up a police officer from another community, even if they wanted to, based on the system that we're in. So again, I'm just trying to explain a little bit more what's going through my mind when I'm trying to balance some of these things.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brandy.
So besides the contact tracing, have you guys identified what other gaps that Ed's reduced hours will create? Like, have you identified what maybe Raj and the health department can take on, and what is still left uncovered?
Well, we're still actually evaluating a lot of that. So one of the things that I think I was concerned about, and we were all concerned about, is how is this going to impact our employee testing, and the ability to get people tested quickly. And that way, if there is a positive case, isolate that to the best of our ability and quarantine it before it spreads out to our staff. So far, we haven't seen the impact, the negative impact that I was worried about. Again, like I said, we've been able to test people. We haven't turned anybody away. Actually, Ed's scheduled to work a patrol shift tomorrow, but I've already talked to Chief Briggs, and we're actually, out of his patrol shift, we have carved off 3 hours to where he's going to be available to do testing for people tomorrow as well. So it hasn't been like a black and white type of thing. We're still figuring out how to balance everything. The other piece that I was concerned about is the ability to operate the vaccine clinics, and especially at the level that Ed is known for performing them at. I mean, I think the one at the high school was just great. I never knew the use of the therapy dogs the way that they were used in that way, and it made a huge difference. Ed put all of that stuff together. I think we'll just have to see what kind of impact his reduced role is going to be on things like the vaccine clinics. It's Ed's still managing our COVID efforts. He's, again, I think we're really more in a wait and see pattern right now. We're seeing if we can still catch up and meet the demand that's necessary. And if there are different ways that we can provide that, if we find that there's a demand that we can't meet with our current resources.
My concern is just the timing of it. I'm sure this was, decided before Omicron really took off and became what it is. I just worry that if we wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks to kind of figure out a game plan, it's almost too late. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that, this is sort of like the last final big COVID event that we're really dealing with, that once Omicron kind of, comes through and we get out of this winter, maybe just maybe we're, coming out of COVID. But I do worry that if we do wait, that the consequences of that will be really severe. And I know that what Ed has brought to this has just been phenomenal. So I think that it's in my opinion really bad timing. And I understand the stresses on the police department, and I agree we need to make sure we take care of our police too. But I just I worry about the long-term ramifications of a couple weeks trying to figure out a plan B.
Well, again, I would point out that Actually, Ed's shift on Saturday, his patrol shift, I think he pulled in half of his shift doing COVID work. And again, tomorrow, almost half his shift's going to be doing COVID work as well. It's hard to plan for the unknown. I think you just have to, try to think of whatever contingencies that you can that come in place. And actually, this is a very good time to talk about. I was going to talk about it later in the meeting. One of the things that we decided today is we're actually going to move, effective Monday, we're moving all of our municipal services to appointment only. So our buildings, our community center, library, town hall, they'll be open by appointment only. We'll be doing virtual programs, and we will be doing that until January 28th. And so, that's a good example. Ed was instrumental as part of, coming up with that plan. He was involved in that.
Truth be told, Brandy, I did have a conversation with Michael a few days back, actually before the new year, when this was being discussed. And I asked if it would be possible to postpone that action for a month, especially seeing, the Christmas spike already with COVID cases, and now with New Year's just happening, 6 days ago, actually 5 days ago. What would be the results of, New Year's Eve peak COVID cases? And if you were to delay this move with Sergeant Berman going back on a 4-2 patrol, and just continue doing what he's doing right now, two things could happen. One, you could prepare for a better procedure in changing over, and you can also continue following, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, you still have everything as is, with respect to testing and tracing cases. So that was brought up. So it wasn't something that wasn't discussed prior to. So.
Yeah. Chair, we're kind of getting into this. I was going to bring this up later. We're kind of getting into a long discussion. But,
well, can you hold on 1 second, Rob? If it's going to be something that we want to discuss at the Board of Health joint
that
session,
might be a good idea, because
why don't you hold on to that? Because we still have some other matters beforehand to get to before we do that.
Sure, sounds
all
good.
right. And I'm sure that everyone that's at this meeting, Zoom wise, will have no problem waiting for a few minutes until we complete other town business before we get into the joint discussion with the Board of Health. Okay, if that's all right with everybody. So I am going to close the citizens' participation at this point in time and revert back to our agenda. And Michael, I will turn it over to you. This is to vote and approve and execute the public safety feasibility and downtown phase 2 planning note in the amount of $3,530,500. Now, this is not an additional amount that we're looking for. These are monies and funds that have already been approved. And I guess the simplest way we can say it is that we're refinancing. We're looking at a lower rate. So, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So Joe, just like you said, this is not new spending. This isn't newly authorized projects. The public safety design and feasibility study was authorized in 2018 in the fall. And then actually the downtown planning was authorized at the annual town meeting in 2018 as well. So again, just to reiterate, this isn't new funds. Is what, we typically do, as do all municipalities. We use short-term debt to bridge. You can either use it strategically as a way to get better financing, or you do it until you're able to assemble a number of borrowings that can be done under one large bond issuance, and that helps you reduce costs. So as you mentioned, this is a renewal of these bond notes, and they are to go to August of 2022. We are paying down almost about 500,000 of this. So that is what leaves us with $3.5 million. And that's a little over 3 million for the public safety feasibility and design, and 128,000 for the downtown planning. We do plan on paying off the downtown planning one in FY23, and we do anticipate rolling in this other borrowing when we borrow for the school as well, to put in a larger issuance. Oh, and I forgot the most important part. We actually received some very competitive rates, and we ended up getting an interest rate of 0.5%, which is the lowest that I think we have received. I went on the Muni Market site today. Looked like some other communities around us were getting more around the 100 basis points or 1% range.
Any questions from any of the board members?
Yeah, Joe, I just have a question. Michael, I apologize. I didn't get to talk to you about this beforehand. Question, people are hearing us talking about this reborrowing, and that's fine. When they're looking at what they're paying, where does this hit in the budget? How does the payment for this borrowing get paid?
Okay, so with the public safety building, so that's paid through excluded debt. And then the downtown planning is paid through non-excluded debt.
Okay. And we're allowed to combine excluded and non-excluded debt into one bond.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. I'll entertain a motion at this time to go ahead, Yolanda.
I move that we award the $3,530,500 Town of Ashland, Massachusetts bond anticipation note dated January 21st, 2020 and maturing August 8th, 2022 to Adams Community Bank at the net interest cost of 0.5%.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Here I.
Kingsman, I.
Magnani, aye. That would be 5-0. So that passes. Thank you. And Michael, thank you. And thanks to everyone who got these figures worked out.
Yeah,
And
Brittany,
treasurer.
yeah, Brittany and Cindy.
Yeah.
Brittany and Cindy both did a lot of work on this. Cindy especially.
Well, that's good. So thank them
We
both.
need to sign documents, Michael.
Yes,
Yes.
if you could come in tomorrow and sign these, Diane has them.
Do.
So we definitely need 3 signatures. It'd be nice to get all 5.
We need to make an
I was a
appointment.
couple of hours early.
Not until Monday, Rob.
Oh, not until Monday. Okay, I can just
Right.
show up. All right.
Yeah, you can show up. You don't need an appointment for this. Okay. Thank you all. At this time, we will continue the previous discussion, and I thank you for indulging me to get into the bond note passing, but it was kind of important that we get this done. A joint discussion with the Board of Health regarding mask mandates and any other topics regarding the COVID crisis issues that we are now facing. So good evening, and I don't know if the Board of Health needs to open up their hearing or their meeting this evening.
Hi, Joe. Thanks.
Hi, Ron.
I'll do that just in case. I recall the Board of Health portion of this joint meeting with the Select Board to order at 7:41. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, good evening and welcome to our meeting as well. As you've heard, this is a very hot topic, and it's a very serious topic that we need to discuss to at least try to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and its variants within our town itself and town buildings. You heard earlier that Michael is entertaining going by appointment only for minutes and meetings within town buildings. And, the possibility of mandating or requiring masks to be worn inside or outside the buildings as well. I know the questions will come out, how do we enforce it? I don't think it's a matter of enforcing. I think it's a matter of common sense at this point in time, that people realize that this is a serious matter. If restaurants are asked that their patrons wear masks when they come in, they could easily post a sign in their entry that masks are required. It was done in the past without forcing or mandating any enforcement penalties. I just think it's the right approach to do, common sense wise. And I think that the business owners would appreciate it as well, because it's keeping their employees safe, their service staff safe from contracting it, and not shutting their business down at the same time because of the lack of business. That's my thought, and I'll open it up for this discussion at this point in time. So, Ron, you're free to call on any of your members to do so.
Yeah, thank you. We had a nice discussion regarding this last night with, no real significant difference of opinion or arguing. Everybody was bringing up points. We certainly wanted to hear your take on things. But eventually, definitely a few of the members were more in favor of not necessarily mandating masks, but trying to continue to get through to people with education and like you had said, some common sense. And two of the most respected people, at least as far as I'm concerned, to listen to and fall back on regarding potential enforcement, and at least that component of it, what it means. If you talk to Ed, who I think is a wonderful resource, I definitely, echo the sentiments of Brandy and Amy and Erin as well. He's done a wonderful job for us. He's, been, a major contributor to the Board of Health. He actually did win our Mary Mortensen award this year for, all his efforts. It's basically Raj and Ed's, really recommendation that a mandate is very difficult to enforce, and that it may take up additional town resources with the amount of calls you might get. And I might have Ed, respond to this as well as Raj, with, why they think this way. So in our meeting, we had, left it up to the discussion tonight, and we thought that possibly having the responsibility, almost like you had said, Joe, fall on the individual businesses to put up signage that says, we request or we require that masks be worn in this establishment. And we completely agree that it does help, mitigate the spread. It does help employers to protect their employees, so that they can stay open, in business. And in principle, both Ed and Raj agreed that in a perfect world, you could mandate masks without any other type of mitigation. Diane made some good points about, why she really would prefer the education and, keep pounding on that door, as well as really trying to get store owners to take the initiative. We're certainly, behind you as well, but that was basically what we had spoken about. And we wanted to get, your board's input and see how you felt you'd like to go.
Procedurally, I have a question. I'm still not clear whose responsibility it is to define and pass something like a mask mandate or a vaccine requirement, vaccinate and things like that. Is that us? Is it the Board of Health? Is it the town manager? What are we actually deciding on here tonight?
Well, I don't know if you can mandate, I think if vaccines were mandated, we could, then we wouldn't have a lot of this issue. But so I don't think we can mandate that, although
the city of Boston has mandated
that
for
kids be
restaurants, so
vaccinated.
people do it. That's not the
Right.
question. The question is whose legal responsibility is it?
Understood. I think that it does fall on us. We've also voted in the past to give Michael, authority in this, urgent situation, the ability to, pursue policy as he perceives, fit for the town. But it certainly could be ours as well. But if you listen to Raj with his experience in dealing with boards of health and enforcement, he can tell you some, potential enforcement issues in Watertown and those type things.
Yeah, Ron,
So-
I appreciate your perspective. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what my role is here. Am I recommending something to somebody? Am I taking a vote to instruct the town manager to do something? Am I discussing it with the Board of Health who will make that recommendation? I guess I'm not clear on what my responsibility
certainly
is.
we have the ability, we do have the ability to do that. I don't know if that necessarily falls under your jurisdiction. My assumption is it probably does. It definitely falls under Mike's. So, we wanted to get together and get your feelings on things.
So
Sure.
I have not quite the same as Rob. When this all started back in spring of 2020, there were certain decisions made about how we were going to do stuff in town. That was it was joint decision between the Board of Health and the town manager. Right?
In the select board.
It was the select board.
Okay.
You only use Board of Health and town
I
manager.
believe it was.
Which is the reason why we're here tonight, to try to do the same thing.
All right. Well, I'm comfortable with the fact of discussing and taking a vote to instruct the town manager to enact certain measures, if that's what we're, if that's what the understanding is.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Joe?
Stephen. I see your hand.
Thank you,
raised.
Joe. So just want to say hi to all the our colleagues from the Board of Health this evening. Rob, I personally, I think it's probably good optics that we do this joint, and I think it's that large enough of an issue that to come from both boards in concert sends a good message. Personally, I'm not a fan of mandates for a number of reasons. I like to think that common sense prevails, but clearly that's not realistic. The reality is that 3 out of every 10 of our residents are not vaccinated, and we get conflicting information about from the CDC almost every day, and this is a very, very confusing situation that we're in right now. I guess my feeling about the fact that we can't depend on common sense and using a mandate or a recommendation is probably the right and prudent thing to do in this case. I don't feel that we should overly burden our businesses at this time. I think we should be, again, encouraging them to act in certain ways. And my observation is that that's happening in many, many cases. Clearly, a restaurant is a unique situation versus the supermarket and so on. But, I'm observing much more mask wearing wherever I go. So, it sounds like there's a combination of common sense and that is occurring there. But, I guess to cut my tune short here, I would encourage that we move forward with an encouragement of masking and behavior.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you. Brandy?
So I agree with Steve. I think a mask mandate for our businesses is really tough to enforce. And it is kind of a burden to put on our businesses. I like the idea of sort of like a strongly worded advisory that we ask the businesses to post that basically says the town of Ashland strongly encourages you to wear a mask to prevent the spread of COVID, and ask them to post that, because I think mostly, I agree with Steve. I think that the number of people wearing masks have risen significantly in the last month. And I would say sometimes people just need a reminder to wear a mask indoors. So that's sort of where I'm leaning, rather than mandating a mask for everyone, because I do think if the state had approved a mask mandate, I think it would be a no-brainer to ask our businesses to help enforce it. But I think it's a heavy lift for businesses that have been struggling so far. So I think we can do something that encourages people to wear masks without mandating and having to put the burden of enforcement on our businesses.
Thank you, Brandy. Anybody else?
I think Yolanda has a
Yeah,
hand.
I'm sorry, Yolanda. I see your
That's
hand
okay.
raised. I'm sorry.
That's
Your
okay,
book is
no.
covering it up a bit. Go ahead.
Not a problem. So yeah, I would go with Steve and Brandy rather than a mask mandate. Highly encourage. We have the mask mandate in town hall. We have the mask in our schools. I think those are the buildings that we as boards, control most of. I think putting this on our businesses, I know what they're doing in New York, and to some regards, it's almost a little bit of theater, right? You have to walk in and show them your vaccine cards and wear your mask, but then you're sitting down at a table 2 feet away from someone, and it's not that helpful. But I think to mandate masks for our businesses, to put that on our businesses is just a lot. I would not support a mandate. I like the idea of a strongly worded, just like when we did spring of 2020, right? You walked into a building and into a business and it said, you are encouraged to wear a mask inside. So I think if we want to go that route, that's fine. But to mandate it, I don't think I'm ready to take that step.
Yolanda, I don't disagree with any of the, hold on a second, Rob. I don't disagree with any of
I think
the
Barbara
comments.
wants to say something as well.
Oh, not a problem. I just have a quick comment to make. I know that in months past, a lot of the businesses took it upon themselves to put signs up.
Oh yeah,
requiring masks,
many
because they
businesses still
themselves
have
didn't want to
signs.
get shut down.
Right.
They didn't want to shut down because the lack of employees coming down with COVID. So they took it upon themselves to do it, and good for them to do that. And I think that's what we're suggesting that they do again during this outbreak. So go ahead, Barbara. You have yourself muted. There you go.
Okay, so I agree with everyone who has spoken. Yolanda, like your point about the restaurants, I think it's more like we discussed yesterday at the Board of Health, it's more education to like the businesses, and like maybe strongly recommending that their staff are the ones to wear the masks. Because like you said, when people are in a restaurant and they are now eating, you can't be expecting them to be wearing the masks because they're now eating. But if the staff who's coming from table to table is protecting themselves, or even in the supermarkets, the servers, the cashiers, if they're, the company's up to themselves to make sure that the staff, just educating them as a reminder, like you said, to have their staff wear their mask. Obviously we can't, it's really hard now with, to be making sure, like we said, if we're already short-staffed, like even if we mandate it, who's going to follow up to make sure that those people are actually doing what is required? So I think more the route of education and encouraging the staff to wear masks will be better.
So Ron, I'm sensing that we're all just about agreeing.
I'm not, Joe. Could I speak?
You're going to interrupt me again, Rob? Really?
No, I've been waiting to speak. That's all.
You haven't spoken yet.
Oh.
I think you have, but go ahead.
No, I was just asking about the process because I wasn't clear on it. That's all.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead. Rob.
So I think we've decided we're going to take a joint vote, but I'm not sure we ever resolved that, or maybe that's what you're going to get to. But before we do that, I'd like to speak on the topic in general.
Please be my guest.
Okay. So, I'm sorry to hear what people are saying here, because I think we are really abdicating our responsibility to protect the public, because we need to come out with a clear message. And it's a simple message for mandatory mask wearing. Very simple, indoor mandatory mask wearing. You talk about supporting the businesses. The business could use the support of a simple rule and directive from their town. That backs them up and supports them in what they should be posting and at least trying to enforce. I don't think it makes any sense to go too far down to every enforcement issue. We don't do that in other places and our other, most people when they go into a restaurant have to wear shoes, shirt, pants, things like that, and they should also need to wear masks. Barbara brought up the example of the staff. The staff are not in a position to wear masks if management is not saying to wear a mask, or the town isn't saying that. They're going to feel the pressure to not wear masks. So the fact that we do not take the step to make a simple, clear rule as the town weakens people's behavior and will result in less mask wearing. Will we have enforcement issues and efforts? Yes, but that's true of anything anyone does. Enforcement is never perfect. At some point you decide, well, 80% of the people comply with it, so at least we got that 80%. We don't have to resolve the last 20% or keep that from doing what is common sense. If we think that people should be wearing indoor masks, we should just simply say it. And other municipalities and cities have done it. So we're not the first and we won't be the last. But there's a lot of, as long as it's an advisory, and we've talked about the fact that we don't have the staff to do education and outreach. So why magically are we going to be able to do that and go around with an advisory and persuading people who should know by now to wear masks? So, I think we just don't have a lot of good reasons to not do this. So, I would ask people to reconsider. Let's issue a simple order. Let's think about, should we, like Boston and other cities, think about vaccination cards to get into places like restaurants? Businesses could like that. Maybe one of the things we should do is survey the business to see what they really think and what their real issues are. I haven't heard a big outcry from Boston restaurants that they have to, or theaters, that they have to implement vaccination cards. So that's something that we should at least be thinking about. I was hoping that the Board of Health would be thinking about that and maybe come up with a plan to do that in a couple of weeks or a month. And monitor the situation. Who knows what's going to happen next? But right now, we're trying to slow the spread and keep people out of hospitals. And the best way to do that is have a clear message. One of the things with this high hospitalization rate is that it's affecting people who have nothing to do with COVID-19. They can't get care. So we need to keep that in mind. There's other victims here. It's not just some recalcitrants that for some reason wearing a mask is something they can't do. My patience with that is at an end. We need to have a clear message here, folks. And I would hope people reconsider and just make a simple mandate. And that's at least step one here. So thank you.
You're welcome, Rob. Before I was interrupted, my thought was to do a joint letter with the Board of Health and reminding the restaurant owners in town or any businesses in town where patrons come into their buildings that it is advised, strongly advised, that a mask should be worn in their premise. So that's where I was going with that. But I have two other additional Board of Health members who would like to speak. And Diane, you raise your hand first, and then I'll go to Barbara.
Well, Joe, I think you just recapped it for me, but I think when we were talking about it last night, yes, enforcement is an issue, but we want to make sure that what we're telling people to do is concrete. And by sending a message, and I think the letter collectively is a good idea, through our businesses, letting them know it's happening in our community. It's not something you're watching on the news, it's happening in another community. Our cases right now, as we speak, are elevated, and we are asking you to help us control it by doing this for your business, our community, as well as our residents. So that was the discussion last night. And I think we could use our resources and educate our businesses that way, because even tonight there was already a local business who had a sign on the door that says masks must be worn, and that's on their own. So I think that if people have provided the information that this is happening in our community, and we educate that we live this every day, all of us, but not all of the people in our community and not all of the businesses. So I think if we educate it that we here in town are having an will and we're asking for your help, I really think that the businesses will sign on, because I think they want to stay open. They don't want to lose their staff either. So I, will support my board members as well as doing this as an education and not as a mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Barbara, you did have your hand raised earlier.
No, I'm all set. I think I just didn't put.
Okay, thank you. Raj, you're sitting there very quiet. I would like to hear from my health agent.
Thank you.
Health agent on this matter.
I'm in a tricky spot. That's why I was so quiet. So my 2 cents as a public health professional, I'm definitely for a mandate. But now the other part is the resources, right? I mean, and to Mr. Rob's question, yes, if the mandate is put in, that's the health departments or the Board of Health duty to enforce it. We just cannot put it and let it to the people to follow it or not. I just want to give you the example of Boston. I saw my inspector at 5 p.m. this evening. 60 to 70% of his work right now is just enforcing masks. He told me he's not able to do his routine duties. All calls are related to people not wearing masks. He showed me his calendar, what he's doing. He's supposed to do like 6 inspections in a day, and most of them are related to mask complaints. I mean, this is how Boston is dealing with. Last year, when I was in Watertown, we issued fines based on state's mask mandate, and a couple of restaurants took us to court, and it was overturned in 1 minute by the magistrate, like saying no, they cannot pay it. Doing all that extra hard work. And last point I want to say this too, there are reasons why CDC or DPH are not mandating it. It's not, they don't know what's going on. I mean, again, resources, we can put it at, benefiting the community more, like doing vaccine clinics, contact tracing and all that stuff, So again, I'll say that again, from a public health point or, practicing public health, I'll definitely love a mandate, but do we have the resources to enforce that? We are short-handed on that. So that'll be my thoughts.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Diane. Your hand is raised again.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. I know you guys have a busy agenda. The other suggestion that we were talking about last night is maybe doing a reverse 911 call to our residents. Again, just notifying them, and I know we all see it on the news, but notifying them this is happening in our community and asking for their help and support by properly, wearing face covering as well as properly hand washing, because I just don't want to, lose sight. I mean, obviously masks work, but also proper hand washing. So I just want to emphasize that for, our residents who are also watching the meeting tonight. So I think if we can push it out to our residents and push it out to our businesses, I think it's going to hopefully take care of what we're all looking to do. And that's to stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you, Joe.
No, you're welcome, Diana. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Steve. I see your hand raised.
Just quickly, and just to clarify, I think Rob's confusion about where we're headed with this. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. I think this should be a joint communication from both boards, whatever that message is. It should be joint. I think we need to determine who's going to draft that, and then get it distributed.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a problem, and I don't know if Ron has the time or the availability to.
I'm happy to do it as well.
Okay, just to sit down. Maybe we can talk over the phone about drafting either an email or a letter to all the businesses. We just got done giving all the licenses that were necessary at our last meeting before the end of the year. So I know we have all their addresses. So, drafting a letter and getting it out forthwith would probably not be a bad idea at this juncture. Adding to what Diane just mentioned about, the washing of the hands and any additional means or steps that could go to reduce the increased cases of the COVID outbreak. And again, I use the word common sense. Granted, it's far more than common sense. It's not being selfish and working to help each other. And I know Rob's sentiment is, I understand where he's coming from. He and I have some similar health issues, and we don't want, there may be others that have the same type of issues or even worse, so we have to watch out for them as well. So it's watching out for the entire community, not just individuals, but everybody as a whole, from our youngest to our oldest. This is not just a single group of individuals. This is the entire community, be it the school, be it private, be it the elderly, be it kids that haven't gone to school yet or are at preschool. It's everybody. And it's also our employees that may not even live in town, but they work in town. And we don't want to see them lose any time out because, again, like the forced overtime issue, it tends to place additional stress on individuals. And stress is probably the worst type of things that you want anybody to go through, especially at a high stress level. And COVID definitely can add to that stress level as well. So I mean, go ahead, Michael.
I just want to get a clarifying question. So am I sending out the communication?
I would like to sit down with Ron and maybe we can draft a letter together.
I'm happy to draft something, Joe, and send it over to you and see what you think and have you add anything you'd like.
Okay.
I can work on that tonight.
And I can present it to Michael and we can work on it that way as well. If you feel that's okay.
Joe, just add a mask mandate to your part of it. That's all.
Add mandate.
Well,
just kidding. Yeah.
Joe, can I just
Sure.
talk to Rob for a second?
Oh, absolutely.
I went into our meeting last night. Thank you. Just for a second. I don't have to bore you with all the details, but I had, all my journal articles ready and, and basically what we do at the hospital. And I was sure that if we were going to take a vote, I don't really think we were going to take one last night, that I'm bringing up exactly the points that you brought up, that if people aren't going to utilize their common sense, that you have to force them, to do that. Because if you look at what any single hospital does, whether or not you believe in wearing a mask or not, if you don't wear a mask, you're not getting in to the hospital to see your appointment. Matter of fact, people can't come into the OR and sit with their loved ones in the pre-op area, or in the post-op area. They haven't really been able to do that, since then. There's not one medical or scientific journal that doesn't espouse the use of masks as a way to slow the spread of the disease. You're 1,000% right on everything you said. And I agree with that. That's what I do for a living, but when you listen to Ed and you listen to Raj and you listen to the other members and you listen to the other members of the select board, they all have valid points as well. And I think if we can word this the right way and have the owners buy in, if the owners of these establishments, basically mandate that people coming into their establishments wear masks and that their employees do as well. I've been in, I'm in Shaw's and Market Basket every week. I did not see one employee in either one of those stores, at least this week. I think as Joe had said, and I think as Steve had said, he saw, more people wearing masks that weren't masked. Every single cashier, every single, person behind the deli counter and fish counter and people stocking the shelves. And I didn't even really see that many people that weren't wearing masks. From a health perspective, just like Raj said, he's all for it from, just that perspective. But if he's got to enforce it and he's going to spend at least half of his time as a one-man show, he's not going to have enough time to do other things. And it would also pull, if Ed was doing more, he'd be answering calls to go try to enforce this as well. And, that's really, why we did this. Just even Diane yesterday was saying that her and I forget one of the other members were answering calls all day for what was that, Diane?
I think what you're referring to, if you don't mind me responding, Joe, is just referencing the COVID hotline.
Go right ahead.
We're answering the COVID hotline for the testing facility, which is great that we have it in the community, but it has taken a lot of resources for us to help the customers, whether they're trying to make an appointment, not getting an appointment, or whatever the case may be. So I was just referencing the fact that, again, we're talking about resources. I mean, this is taking a lot of time out of our day. We've been tracking the calls, and at first we said 15 to 20 calls per day, and I can't even tell you how many. I mean, it's astronomical how many people are trying to get tested and can't get tested. And if I can, I just wanted to add one more thing, because I know the board has a busy agenda, and I really, again, I know we had the meeting last night, having the meeting tonight. I feel really passionate about this. And if both boards agree, I would like to make a motion to my board is to authorize Michael Herbert to work with Raj and Ed Berman to draft a letter for our businesses, as well as a notification for the public, as well as, any social media notifications to educate the public on proper protocols. Because I just think that if, the rest of us are volunteers, it's going to take a little bit more time. And I think we might be able to expedite it if we have our staff do the letter.
I would support that, Diane.
Okay, so if Joe, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a motion to my board.
Before you do that,
Sure.
Brandy has a hand raised, and I'd like to get a comment before you make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Brandy.
So I would make a suggestion to maybe, in addition to a letter or whatever communication we have, if we can have our communications people maybe draft a flyer that we include with this letter that basically we will give to businesses and ask them to post. It makes it easier for them. And it might be just something that we give as an additional resource just to make it easier. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
And Joe, if I just real quickly, I would suggest to piggyback off of Diane's motion. Yolanda, if you want to make a corresponding motion for the board, for the select board.
Yes, I make the same motion for the select board that Diane made for the Board of Health.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Well, we
We
collectively.
haven't heard the motion yet.
Yeah, I was going to say
Bob
that.
is seconded
for the Board of Health.
I need a second for the.
Okay,
Select
that's
Board.
great.
I'll second that for the select board.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy. Okay.
And just
So-
one other quick thing to piggyback off of Brandy. I think it might even be beneficial to add the proper quarantine guidelines in the letter, Tom, just so we can pass on that information to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that addendum made to the both motions, for the select board, all those in favor of the motion on
Aye.
the table? Voice vote, please.
Greaves,
Thank
aye.
Mitchell,
I'll vote aye only because I don't have any alternative. And I do think it's a good idea. I'd rather it was stronger, but I'll vote in favor of this.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Okay.
Kinsman,
And Mignani, aye. So that's
Board of
5.
Health, all in favor? Yep.
Hi, Bernadette.
Yeah.
Hi,
Aye.
Diane.
Aye, Ron. Right. I don't know. Do we have, is Jay on?
Yes, he is.
So that's at least 3, correct?
You have
Yeah.
5.
Yeah,
You have
Jay's
5.
here.
Here on.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Jay.
So,
We
so
have
the
5.
select,
Okay. All right.
so you have 5-0.
Yep.
The select board is 5-0
5-0
as well. Okay, so that motion has passed, and the sooner the better. So unfortunately, Raj, you're going to have to take time out of your busy day to sit down with Michael and out of his busy day to sit down and draft a letter of correspondence.
I'd be happy to do that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good to me. Thank you. Anybody else have any additional comments with respect to this? It was a very good discussion. That's needed, and we need to keep following up on this. Hopefully we have continued updates at every meeting, and maybe on our website, we could have daily updates as well. I know that Sergeant Berman has been providing us updates via email on the cases, and if that can continue, that would be great. Just to see where we're going, and especially with respect to the schools. So I know Ed is in the audience as well. Ed, is there any comments you would like to make with respect to the discussions that we've had this evening?
No, I agree with everything.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Joe,
With
if I
that,
can, I was gonna say, if I can make a motion for our board to adjourn our meeting.
okay.
Any
You must be-
seconds?
All right.
All
Bernadette, want to second that?
Bernadette, yeah, I second it.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, great. All in favor to adjourn the Board of Health section of this joint meeting? Aye, Ron.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Barbara.
Okay. All right, 4. Right.
Jay. Thank
Joe
you.
and the board and the select board, thank you very much for having us. We appreciated being a part of it and your input. Raj, thank you. And Ed, of course, thank you as well. And Diane, good meeting last night. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
Ron,
Thank you
thanks
very
for
much.
your explanation.
Thank you.
You're productive, and I hope it continues. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Joe, just a question.
Sure.
Are
Ralph.
we still going to talk about the whole Ed Berman response situation? And I don't know if the Board of Health people want to stay for that, or do we talk about that later? I just have a few thoughts and comments on it. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing huge.
Well, when we do the COVID update, if you want to bring it up, then you could do.
Yeah,
it.
that's fine with me, unless there's people here who want us to talk about it now.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, we are running about a half hour late, but I think it was a half hour additional discussion that was much needed.
Yeah.
And I appreciate everybody's indulgence and understanding for what we had to do with respect to this past issue and current issue. So, Mr. Crow, who is stepping in for Joel Beitman, is going to do a presentation on the Epital Trail Route. And good evening, Preston. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you for having our trail committee come to present to you and this opportunity to help move this project forward.
Sounds good. Now, I know you have a couple of presentations that you like to do. You have a map and a slideshow. If you would like to, can we share his screen?
Yes, I can
So we
share
can
my
take a look at
screen
that.
here. And I believe, do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. We were given a couple of questions, and I'm going to focus the presentation on those questions. And if you have any other questions, feel free to interrupt, ask at the end, however the select board feels like handling it. With that, I'll dive right in. One of the issues that I was asked to look into is what changes have we made from the approved plan that was developed with the Alta trail study. And we've only had 2 changes. I think they're both minor and they're both in the rail transit district. One is the committee has decided that we think it's probably better to go around the Cirrus Apartments to the north as the slopes are better. We're still open to the south option if new developments make it more attractive. We've yet to see exactly what is happening there with the housing development project that's been batted around, and I'm not clear on what the current state of that is. The other is exiting onto High Street is changed slightly to avoid easement issues, and I will show those in a second. We've also discussed a number of alternatives in case of easement issues, but in all the other cases, we still prefer the approved plan. So we haven't recommended changing things. We've just talked about, well, if we can't get this, where else could we go? Those kind of discussions, which is just forward-looking. How can we handle this? So for the trail going around Cirrus Apartments, if you can see my mouse here, little pointer, the north route is a very level route. It's a little narrow in places, but we think that can be made to work. The approved route from the Alta plan is very steep in places and could be very challenging. So that is why we're currently recommending focusing on the northern route there. For leaving the rail transit district to High Street and going up Whittemore, the blue route is what Alta recommended, and the green route, as you can see, it goes up this paper road that I believe is going to be part of the town property when the rest of the rail transit district plans go through. And then we would cross High Street there, and it appears there's enough land that the town owns to go along the other side of High Street and the other side of Whittemore, and then cross Whittemore when we go into the town-owned land there. So those are the 2 changes. We also have, I have a map that I can go into much more detail showing the whole trail route. It might be useful to just do a quick overview of that at some point if we have time. One of the other questions was why go to Ashland State Park and through there instead of just using the Trolley Brook Trail that's already built and then going through downtown through the Stone Park and Homer Avenue up Chestnut, and then following the same route that had been planned. The Trail Committee strongly believes we need to keep the route through Ashland State Park. Ashland State Park is, of course, a very important destination and a huge asset for trail users. But also, the whole point of the trail is to keep the trail off-road. Sidewalks and bike lanes are great, but they're really not a trail. Trails attract far more users. They attract a much wider range of users, especially kids and families, a lot more recreational users, and a lot of people who are frankly just not comfortable riding a bicycle or walking that close to cars. That's not what they're using the trail for. Likewise, it was suggested that we could follow Route 135 from the bottom of Memorial Drive to the current Ashland State Park entrance instead of trying to get an easement to go around the housing development that's there across the street from Memorial Drive. And the trail committee does agree that a sidewalk there would be great. But again, a trail alongside 135, the busiest road in town, or at least it gives Pond Street a good run for its money, is not a good idea for a trail. There's far more traffic there than on Memorial Drive, and the need for separation from traffic from recreational users would be significant. And so there frankly isn't enough land if you're going to put a good separation between the trail users and the road. And it's also just not attractive. So this brings me to the end of the formal presentation. As a committee, we are happy to build any segment of the trail we can, but we want to prioritize portions that will make connections. So obviously if an opportunity somewhere arises, yeah, we'll build whatever section we can. And we have decided that we want the Ashland State Park connection to be the next one based on that priority. But we can't proceed anywhere on the trail without additional easements. So that's really our focus right now. And we need town staff to do that. We can't go out and negotiate with property owners. So that is where we are. And
Preston, I was wondering if you could do me a favor and put the map back up for a second.
yes, I was expecting that. So I've got the map here.
Thank you. I don't know if you can make that a little bit larger.
I can, no, I can make it smaller. And I can make it larger. Yes.
Actually, that's pretty good. Looking at the south side of town, where the bike path is going to try to connect to the Sherburne side.
Over here. Yes.
Yep. The Dyke Trail route.
Yes.
Would it be prudent to start working on that area first, seeing that there's a lot of open space area there that can be done without much struggle?
It's not a bad idea. One of the problems is right now it'd be a trail to nowhere because Sherburne hasn't done their part, and it would be great if we could do that in coordination with them. But I believe they're having difficulty with some of the rail easements that they want to get, acquiring the land from CSX.
Okay,
I'm
I was
not
not
quite
aware
sure
of
what
that.
the status on that is. Also,
I can update that if you want.
Okay.
The CSX, we asked Senator Spilka's office to talk to CSX about granting Sherburne some of those easements. The issue on that side could be that Sherburne has actually done a very nice parking lot on, I think it's Maple Street. At that point, Elliott becomes Maple Street, and people can park there and get on the trail. So in effect ends on Maple Street, which is just off this map. Yeah, probably, I guess a little around there. So that's actually pretty nice, but it leaves us with that last linkage unfilled. And that really is a thorny issue with CSX.
Well, and also with that, their trail does not actually go on the rail bed. It goes next to it, and then it doesn't get to the rail bed until the end of Holliston. Sherburne, though, is working aggressively. They are interested in doing their portion, but as you said, Rob, CSX is the issue. There has been discussion at a regional level to see if we can get group discussion with CSX, because Sherburne isn't the only community having those issues.
Yeah.
The other issue with this particular segment is not all of it is on town property. Some of it crosses over into some private property. So again, there are easements. Unless we wanted to go straight through the wetlands, and as a Conservation Commission member, I'm a little leery of that approach. But there clearly are going to be a lot of concerns with turning this into a real trail with all of the wetlands there.
But those are on the parcel list, right, Preston?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Preston. I appreciate that. Thank you, Rob and Yolanda, for that additional information. Clears that up for me anyway. Thank you.
So Joe, if I can jump in, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Thanks. So I spent a couple hours with Joel going through this in quite some detail last week. And I asked him 1,000 questions, but I have some general questions that, maybe it's more for the board than the trail committee, but the Alta map that was put together, which predates me on the board, was probably, Rob, you probably know, at least 4 years ago?
I think that sounds right, 3 or 4 years ago. So
the Alta map was put together, and Joel had said that the map was approved. And I'm curious if, sort of like, what was the approval process for it? Because in talking to Joel, it sounds like that, like the planning board process, that there's not something part of the planning board process if there is a property that could potentially be a trail adjacent to the trail, that it's not part of that process. So I'm curious, like the approval process and how set in stone that approval was, because it has been so long. So I'm just curious.
I'll give you my take on it if you like. I think the board, in my recollection, other people there, we had this map and this report, and we basically voted to accept it and move ahead. I don't think we voted to accept every detail, or we were certainly with the understanding there could be changes.
Yeah.
But it was in concept approved. Does that pretty much sum it up,
Yeah.
folks?
Yeah, Joe, if I could jump in, I think Rob is correct. Yeah, so Brandy, we did approve this conceptually, realizing that, the challenges with creating this route were substantial, and that modifications were going to be needed and would be dealt with as we confronted them. I think it's even longer than 4 years ago when this was done. I believe it's been at least maybe 3 years when the select board and the trails committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, met in the basement of town hall to talk about next steps. And one of those next steps were the low-hanging fruit. And, clearly the Charlie Brook Trail was one of those, and the Dyke Trail was identified as well. And it was my understanding that was kind of the approach the committee had agreed to at that point in time. Be that as it may, I happen to agree right now that is a trail to nowhere. And, is it the most efficient use of whatever resources we can muster? My question, though, is I just want some clarity. And, I know Tony Lewis is on this call, and, between Tony and I've also walked with Joel and Rob, for that matter, most of this route. I'm assuming, and Preston, if you can shift over the map to the right, I'm assuming that this green route that is identified that goes through, comes down past Cirrus, down Memorial Drive into the state park, is the official route. And if I'm reading this correctly, the Trolley Brook Trail is purely a spur. It's not really part of the Upper Charles Trail. Is that correct?
We have always envisioned it as having kind of like the business loop that would be the Trolley Brook Trail, and then safe alongside the road path that you could go through downtown and then get back up with the off-road trail, while also having the full off-road route through
Right,
the state
okay.
park.
But the preferred route, if and Rob, you were there from the beginning as well. The preferred route was always the route that came down Memorial and then went across into the state park and looped around up to around the cemetery, correct? And again, just for clarity, the Trolley Brook Trail is a spur that goes into downtown and connects with the trail, the official trail, the preferred trail later on. And so I just wanted to get some clarity on that. I get it. And I guess the second question I have is in terms of easements, the state park, what is the status of that? Has the committee explored? What is the needs for getting into the state park and utilizing that property?
We've had some discussions with DCR, and they've been very excited about the idea of bringing the trail there. So our concern mainly has been figuring out the path into the park from 135. And we've looked at several different, again, minor variations on, what minimizes the wetlands, what minimizes the impact on the residents, what easements do we think we can get. But ultimately, the route that we have right now in green is what we believe is probably the best route.
Okay.
Assuming we can get the easements.
Okay.
So Preston, looking at that map and leaving it right where it is with respect to the state park, I'm assuming that you were going to put the park adjacent to the dam structure that runs up towards Chestnut Street. Is that what I see?
This would actually run over the top of the dam.
Okay. All right. So it's over the dam, not adjacent to it. Okay.
Yeah. As adjacent to it would be either on a steep slope or in the water.
Oh, floating path's not a bad idea.
Yeah. But maybe in the winter when there's thick ice, but no. Yeah, probably the biggest challenge here is the part that goes over towards Main Street because that's essentially all through wetlands. So that would all be raised boardwalk at some point. That would likely be one of the more expensive parts of the trail, but also a very nice part when it's all done.
Okay, thank you.
Preston, you had mentioned priorities and you had said the state park is a priority. I had asked Joel about whether or not the trail committee had put this into phases, and he said that it wasn't something that was really considered. But I'm looking at this and thinking, maybe putting it into phases is not a bad idea, because I know Joel was saying that in order to basically be able to apply for grants, mass trails grants and things like that, we would need to have control over the easements and the route. And, while it would be great to have all parcels, to be in control of all parcels before anything commences, I think it's not a realistic, it's just not realistic, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm, but I know we're gonna have to figure out the financing part of this and other things as well. I'm just thinking from an organizational standpoint and from a, maybe presenting at a town meeting standpoint, maybe putting it into phases might not be a bad way to go, is my suggestion.
I could certainly see that, and we can talk about that. I think the thinking on the committee has been that we just want to start getting some easements into the state park, for example, so that we've gone through the process and we understand, how everything works. And if we want to then say, okay, we're going to focus on going the section from the Memorial Drive to Hopkinton, That would not be a bad thing to do, especially once the town gets control of the other side of Memorial Drive. And that would be a good phase. There are, we could get the area, the sections going, to and from the high school, for example, would also be an excellent asset, simply just for the students to use, if nothing else. So yeah, there certainly are a number of phases that we could do. And I think the biggest debate would be which order to do them in. And really the answer is, well, which one can we get the easements for first? So I don't think, if we listed phases, it implies we want to do each phase in order. And I'm not sure that's actually something we would have a lot of agreement on, but
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Preston, one question. What is the committee's timetable to really start getting into the nuts and bolts of this project, even though Trolley Brick Square has been completed?
Yeah, the Trolley Brook Trail is awesome. We're thrilled with that. We're at a point now where until we get some more land control, there's not much more we can do. So we're kind of spinning our feet at this point. So we really want to get some easements and start developing more parts of the trail. Without more easements, there's not much more we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, can I jump in?
Go ahead,
I have a
Yolanda.
couple of
Yep.
comments and a couple of questions.
Yep,
First,
go right ahead.
Steve, I'm going to disagree in regards to, yes, the primary is for the state park, but Alta always talked about having the downtown route as part of the loop. So there could be a mini loop just through Ashland, and then the rest of it could go through to be part of the complete Upper Charles Trail. That's my memory. Preston, in your comments, you said, you don't think it makes sense to have the trail on Route 135 to get into the state park. I don't know that when we talked about it as a board, that was ever the permanent thing, but it was a possibility of at least getting it to the state park that way on a temporary basis before we could get some of the easements, because there was consideration that by doing a wider sidewalk, we could possibly do that with ARPA funding and then put a crosswalk. So that wasn't, in my mind, ever the long-term solution for getting us into the state park. So Kevin, and I forget his last name and I apologize, of DCR, who works at the Ashland State Park, is very supportive and very excited and definitely willing to work with us to get this through the Ashland State Park. He has been on board since probably 4 years ago, when through the regional collaborative, we had a discussion at the Ashland State Park about their landline projects, which not only just looks at Ashland, but looks at all the trails throughout the region. So, maybe we need to do a reach out to him. And right now, transportation and trails, there is money, there is grants, there is enthusiasm, there is support behind it. So I think, we need to be moving forward. In regards to phases, Preston, in my mind, phases is not, okay, we're going to do this first and then this next and this next. I think we need to sort of bite off these parcels in phases, right? We're not going to be able to do the whole thing all at once. So if we can identify short sections, similar to what we did with Trolley Brook Trail, right? That was a short section. We could do the engineering. If we can identify different sections that we can be working on, and if we can get control of one, then we can start working on that one. If we can get control of another, then we start working on that one. I don't think it's serial. Okay, now we're working on this one and that's all we're focused on. I think it's really a discussion of, you mentioned the Wildwood, by the cemetery and to the high school. That conversation about getting some of that property has already been started. So let's keep going with that. Regards to Cirrus Apartments, we know that conversation is going on as well. I think we need to make sure all these separate conversations about the separate parcels are continuing, and whatever one sort of hits first, that's where we need to then be able to move quickly on. So I would ask of the trails group is, granted, you need money for engineering, especially because we're not exactly sure what the parcel is going to look like. But if you could have if the committee could have in their mind, what are the steps? Let's say we get that section from 135 through, by Voyagers Lane into the state park. What does that mean? Once we have that, what are the steps necessary? And let's have all those steps laid out so that if we get a parcel or a couple of parcels, we know what the next steps are. So, like I said, I think there is a lot of grant funding. There is a lot of support for this right now. So if we can, again, this is even though the trail isn't quote unquote a priority project, it is included in almost every priority project, right? We're making sure that when they're working on 126, they're looking at what that cross is going to be to get from one side to the other to our potential trail. Is the trail ready? Not quite, but we want to make sure that the intersection and the lighting and the whatever they want to put there for transportation on that project is in place for when we move forward with the rest. I think the committee's been doing great work. I applaud you. I know it's been going on for a while, and I think everyone on this board and certainly everyone on your committee has heard me say, we've only been working on this for 8 or 9 years. And it took Holliston 20 years and they had an empty rail bed. So I think it's going to be one of those things that eventually it's just going to just pop and it's going to get done. It's finding the time, but also having the information available so that when a parcel becomes available that we can do and work on, we're ready to move forward as quickly as possible.
So instead of phases, let's talk about segments.
That's a great, okay. We can certainly use that word. That makes sense.
Yeah, because phases implies an order and segments
Right.
does not.
Okay, then segments, I think.
But yeah,
is a better-
we could certainly identify 1, 2, 3.
We have talked about
maybe
phases,
five or
segments.
five or six
Yeah.
segments,
Okay,
and then we could separate the discussion of easements to each of the segments that they're in.
right. I
and-
guess my last comment is, I look at the segment that's supposed to be through Big Indian. And to me, that's very pie in the sky. Until something happens potentially with the people who are currently running it. So I think we
Right,
need to look at the off.
I'm
the
aware of that.
on-road routes if we want to do the part there.
We actually do have a alternate that goes through, which is actually town-owned property,
Yeah,
at
I
least to
think-
High Street.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely something we
Cross
should be
Street.
looking at. Yeah,
and there are a couple other possibilities.
right.
Yeah, one of which, if we got an, I don't want to go into the details, but
No,
there
that's fine.
are
That's
a couple
fine.
of
Yep.
other options that aren't even on the map right now that we
Right,
could
which is fine.
lay out
Yep.
as options.
Okay.
Steve, you had your hand raised.
I did. Just quickly, Preston, can you move the map over to the left, please, over to where the cemetery is and that? And my question is, why are we not working on, I guess, properties that we have control over at this point in time? And it seems to me that the loop around the cemetery up into the high school and then coming down into that whole section, I believe we control most of that unless it's through an easement of Eversource. Is that part of it?
Right, there is an Eversource easement, and I generally don't want to talk about the details on easements, but I happen to know that that's owned by, I think, Chestnut Mortgage Company, and it's in, they haven't been paying the taxes on it, so we may want to do a tax taking on that, but so that would be, that's one of the easements over here that we need to get.
Right.
With the public safety building, there's the rest of that property that I don't believe we took, and routing around the cemetery probably is going to require going through some of that land. So that We don't believe we have control of the whole route needed on either side of the high school,
Okay.
but it is fairly close. You know, I think
Okay.
on each side of the high school, we're probably talking about one easement or possibly two.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Preston, with respect to piggyback what Steve just asked, with the path going through the high school property, has the school committee provided assurances that you folks can use that as part of the path, or is that still in discussion at this time?
We didn't get like a formal signed document, but we did get support from the school committee, though that was a number of years ago and the membership has changed. So as we get closer, we'll have to go back and discuss that with them again.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the principal of the school was also involved with that. I personally was not directly involved with that, so I'm relaying secondhand information, so I hope I'm correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, any other questions for Preston regarding the path?
Michael has his hand
Michael
up.
has his
Oh, I'm
hand
sorry,
raised.
Michael. I didn't see your hand up there. My screen is so small, I can't see that. And go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask briefly a question regarding, I think, a larger process. One of the things that, I've had conversations with many of you individually or in small groups about is how we actually are going to get this engineered and funded. And my understanding, it seems like the most realistic approach would probably be to get all the easements necessary, so we have site control. From that standpoint, maybe either get some state money, grant funds or earmarks, or even local funds to do the larger engineering piece. And at that point in time, we would have the ability to get it on the tip to ultimately get funded. Is that still kind of what our prevailing thought is on how we're going to approach this?
I think that's how the trail committee thinks is most practical. We can keep picking off a little part here and there, like we did with the Trolley Brook, but to really get this done, that's probably the best route. And we're hopeful that there will be state funding that is specific to trails that is easier to and faster than the TIP program.
Yeah, there is some.
Well, that would be great because, the tip can take, once you get it on there, you still have to wait for a little bit, and then you got the construction of it, which will take a few years.
So from
I
that
just-
perspective, right, there's certain areas that could be harder to do that if we can start getting some of the easements and some of the engineering started and at least apply for the tip. And if for some reason then we've done stuff, we all know that prices are going to escalate. And like I said, if we can get ourselves on the tip, within 2 years, and then it's granted 5 years out of that, that's still getting it done. And if we've gotten it done other ways, then I don't know. I think we should look at least trying to use the tip long-term as well.
That's why I asked, how long do you think this process will take? Because if we definitely use the tip, that's going to add on some time to that process and procedure. What is the total length of this path that goes through the entire town, mileage-wise?
I unfortunately don't know that number.
About 7 miles is what we were looking at.
Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate that. You had your hand raised as well. Did you have a comment as well, Valerie?
Yeah, I did have a comment, a couple of things over time. One of the main reasons that we've been looking most recently at focusing on getting down to the state park through Voyager's area, one of those, is that by joining up with DCR land, that gives us something pretty substantial that we can be working on. And it's not a piece of the trail that would require tremendous engineering, like going through the wetlands or something like that. And even if it doesn't go out the other side of the state park, it gives a real destination from the train station and from downtown. So I think if we can look long-term at trying to do some of the big pieces through the tip and doing some little connectivity, little connective pieces that will enhance the existing core piece of the trail in the meantime, that will help keep town enthusiasm for the project alive, so that people aren't saying, oh my God, we have to wait 9 years to actually see anything besides this half a mile piece of it. So we have, we've thought in terms of, dual path on these things and doing pieces of it that connect with what we've got.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else would like to? Rob, you've been awful quiet.
Oh, yeah. No, well, thank you. Yeah, I think this has been a very good discussion because I think it's important for people to get their thoughts, ideas, and questions out. I think, and I don't have any particular single route I think is the greatest thing. And I think we've all spent, many of us have spent years kind of looking at what's best. But I think, get back to what I think Michael was saying, and the purpose of this meeting is once we at least have a consensus or agreement on generally where the route is, then that's when we get into this, can we actually get control of the route and the easements? And then we can really start the engineering and the fundraising. Or maybe the fundraising, some of it can be used for easement acquisition as well. But I think this has been a great discussion, and just, hopefully we can move forward to the next phase, which I think people more or less agreed on, which was we have to get a controlled route that we can start working with. And there may be other things we do in the meantime, smaller things that we see that come up. I think that was a good, one of the things we probably have been a little, I think haven't done so well as to kind of institutionalize the route. I think Brandy was talking about that. Like, I think the trail committee, somebody should go to the planning board soon and make a similar presentation. And Preston was a longtime member, but now that he's gone, I think it's worth getting back to them. So as they look at these developments, they can say, hey, wait a minute, our trail's supposed to go near there, or, so that's just another thing I think we need to kind of institutionalize the route again. But, I think let's get these questions out and discussions, and so we can move ahead as a kind of a united front here.
I don't disagree with you, Rob. And it's on record, by the way, that I said I don't disagree with you. I just want to know that.
Now get that down.
You get that written down. Good.
Yeah.
Preston, C3 and letter H and J that are in red. Is that where Pout Rock is? That area? Because it looks like it's
over here.
Right. Yeah. Is that where Pout Rock is?
Yes. That is the
okay.
Across the stream from the Fenwall factory.
Right. Well, the old Fenwall. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of land, and even apart from the trail, it'd be wonderful if the town could find a way of acquiring that just to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
So I would hate to see a housing development go in there.
Mm. Yep. No, thank you. I appreciate that. I know Rob mentioned it briefly, especially with the state park. The path will be a raised path via like a boardwalk over the conservation land.
It would pretty much have to be.
Yep. Okay. And that's an approval with respect to the conservation committee. They would agree to that, having it a raised path instead of laying specifically on the vegetation itself.
I think it's a boardwalk.
Yeah, boardwalk. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I believe there were some discussions before I joined the conservation committee.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But it might make sense, just like we're looking to go back to the planning board or go to the planning board with a presentation. It might make sense to do a presentation at the Conservation Commission as well, so that they're aware of this discussion now that we're trying to all move it forward.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Yolanda. And I think that with respect to the state park property that we will be enhancing by putting that boardwalk through their property. wouldn't mind trying to solicit funding from DCR with respect to this as well.
Like I said, I can reach out to Kevin, who I know there, and
Okay.
see what we can do.
Yeah, seriously, because it's just going to enhance the state park even more so.
Oh, yeah.
For more people to come, So just a thought. Well, thank you, Preston. Are there any more questions or comments at this time? Preston, thank you very much for stepping in and taking over on Joel's behalf. Great presentation, and I'm sure we'll be talking sooner than later.
You're welcome. I look forward to doing this again at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to the other members who are here too.
Yes,
thank you very much, everybody. Don't mean to keep you all out. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you again for all your efforts. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're moving right along. Under old new business, it's to review a letter that's been drafted, and I thank Brandy for drafting this correspondence to DHCD. I think we all have a copy of that letter. And the year that had 2000 XX is actually the year 2000. Was when, that's how long ago this project has been going.
That was the one thing I didn't have, was that date. And then I saw that Michael had added some additional text too, which I think is great. So just curious if there's feedback.
I thought it was well written. I think it's certainly hits our efforts over a significant period of time to enhance our housing stock and to leverage our rail transit district. I think the radius from the commuter rail, I think to me seems very clear that it's the fact that we miss that half mile by such a short amount should certainly be considered. I think it hit everything that we discussed when we move forward with this.
Yeah. With respect to this, just a little quick history. This is when we're having town meetings back at the Mendez School in their auditorium. That's where these discussions actually started with respect to the Gainer property and what they wanted to do. And I believe it was Governor Weld at the time who was looking. Oh no, it wasn't Governor Weld. It was Deval Patrick. I'm sorry, I take that back. It was Governor Patrick who was looking for rail transit districts in the area. And the first local area in the state at the time was Ashland. Yep. We would have been the first rail transit district in the state if things went according to plans. But unfortunately, the developer had other thoughts. And
we were one of the first to have the zoning for it.
Correct. Yeah. So, I don't know if that's something that we may want to. I mean, the letter is perfect, but just to give them some history, because these people may not have been on board at the time. So it may be something to add to help enhance the need to stretch this district out a little further and asking for consideration and for other projects that may not actually fit their criteria.
So can I?
Yep.
Go ahead, Michael.
I wanted to ask a question and also just make an observation. So first of all, I had recently received an email from DHCD for a webinar for these new regulations. I want to make sure that you all received it as well. If not, I'm happy to forward it, but it looked like it went to Ashland officials.
Yeah, so, I don't remember seeing it. Did other people get it?
When did it come out, Michael? Because I don't remember seeing that at all.
Joe, I think it was yesterday.
It's like January 13th or 18th or something.
Oh, yeah, you got it. So maybe I got it.
So I want to make sure you had that. The other thing is, Steve and I were actually talking about this the other day. And I think the last time we discussed this on the agenda, we had a lot of concern about, just how this is going to work and how you know, how our zoning or existing zoning could factor into these new regulations. And actually, I didn't know this at the time, but if you look at our Pleasant Street, if you look at the south side of that, that is all zoned not only industrial, but ADDA, which doesn't have like a density requirement such as like 20 units per acre. It's designed basically around a floor area ratio of 2.0. So however many square feet the lot is, you can actually double that in terms of the size of your building. So it's actually should be our most densest zoning. So it looks like we're going to be in decent shape with regards to that.
Yeah, I think you and I had that conversation, Michael, as well.
That's true.
I don't know if you get me mixed up with Steve now, but
you know what?
No, there's no mix up there. But but I think
we did talk, Rob.
It's clear with the underlying zoning that it's, and the regulations I think speak to the capacity or the capability of having something, not that you have to have
it.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that we have this stretch that is zoned the way it is qualifies us under this guidance. So
correct. That's why I said I think we're in better shape than we had anticipated at our last meeting.
Just a question about the letter. I think it's very well written. Just to confirm, so it says here Ashland has increased housing stock from approximately 6,500 units in 2010 to 7,500 units. Is that all types of housing? Is that single family, apartments, condos?
Yes, that's all types.
Oh, okay. So that's a big increase percentage wise.
It is.
10 years. Wow. That makes, okay.
So Michael, just to clarify, the zoning on Pleasant Street plus what we already currently have for the rail transit district would be enough. We wouldn't need to take any additional action on our parts.
I don't know if it'll be enough, Brandy, but it certainly moves the needle in a large way in that direction towards being compliant.
I would think they're going to get a lot of pushback on this. I would think, given what requirements they initially started with. And it's interesting too, because abutting communities to the host community also have to provide a certain amount of housing stock as well, additional housing stock. So it seems like, just looking at some of the list of the communities, a place like Sherborne has to increase their housing stock by 750 units. Okay, how's that work?
Yeah.
So this, first of all, I apologize for missing the meeting in December where you guys talked about this in detail. That we have been having this conversation with the Metro West Regional Collaborative, and just like we're writing a letter of support, a letter back with information for their guidelines, the collaborative is going to do the same thing. And as you said, Steve, it looks, you look at it and you think it's not all 9 communities, but in actuality, because it's also the communities that touch the community, that touch us, or they're all 9 communities of the Metro West Collaborative are touched by this. So we're trying to get someone from DHCD out to one of our virtually to our meeting to discuss this. So if that happens and we want to give more feedback as a community, we can do that. But I would also ask if it's okay that I use some of the wording we're using here about what Ashland has done and some of the recommendations that we have to tie that into the letter that the collaborative is going to write. Because I think if you have similar language coming from a number of different points, it makes those points that much stronger.
I'll leave that up to the author of that drafted this. Do you have a problem with that, Brandy?
Oh God, no. You
Cool.
Absolutely. No, I trying to draft this, it just, trying to see where we are as a community and what we've done, putting it on paper, we've really made some substantial strides. And I think in the spirit of what the state is trying to do, we are very compliant. So I think that asking for some additional
Tweaks to their guidelines.
Yeah, I think some changes, would make it a stronger, not only stronger for Ashland, but I think in general, I think that their guidelines are very restrictive, and I think that there will be a lot of pushback from other communities.
Right.
Hopefully the state will actually take some of these recommendations, and because it's going to be a while before we get the final guidelines will be issued
After they get all their feedback in March. So
I was gonna say it's like over the summer, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, they're taking feedback until March 15th. So by the time they get it all and decipher it and have a conversation, it could be a little bit.
So Michael, I can't find the email for the webinar. Can you send that out again?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just checked. I just went and checked mine. I did not see it. So, but then again, I didn't check my junk mail too, which sometimes I have to check because it falls into that. Because it doesn't read it properly.
I just sent it over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's January 12th.
January 12th. Yep.
Okay, next week. Sounds good. Thank you. So, do we need to make a motion to accept the letter as presented and to send it off?
Second.
This is what I love about this board. We anticipate each other's
Just
actions.
do it, Sometimes we just got to move it along.
Okay, so there's been a motion, it's been seconded, and voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Fair eye.
Kinsman, aye.
Mignani, aye. So I think it's 5-0. Thank you. And
Good
again,
work,
Brandy,
Brandy.
thank you.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah,
Brandy, for
thanks.
drafting that.
Thank
Good job,
you.
Brandy.
You're welcome. Happy
Very
to do
good.
it. Consider it what I did on my Christmas vacation.
Christmas vacation, and prior to that, you wrote a poem.
Lots of talents there, lots of talents.
Yep.
Where did you spent more time on the poem though, right?
Oh, the poem is, more closer to my heart.
Next on our list, on our agenda is the consent agenda. I'm sure you all
Move that we
had the
consent the
opportunity.
agenda as presented with the fixes made by Brandy.
Is there a second to that?
Yeah, Steve seconded it
Oh,
already.
you seconded it already? I'm
Before
sorry.
I finished, so.
I was waiting for Preston, but he didn't.
Well, he's still listening. I was waiting for an eye. All right, voice vote, please.
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Fair eye.
Kinsman, aye.
Mignani, aye. That's 5-0. Again, thank you. We will turn this over to our town manager, Mike Herbert, regarding priority projects and their updates. First on is the rail tender, transit district.
Yeah, and I will just say to preface this part of the agenda, there really are not many updates simply because we've been in the holiday season. But with regards to the rail transit district, there has been, I believe, a little bit of movement between the landowner Bob Gaynor and UGC just on finalizing their transaction. And that's really important for us because as we discussed earlier today, we won't get that piece of land that we're looking at to circle around the Cirrus apartment complex until that transaction is completed, and we then do an A&R lot with UGC for our portion of the land. So again, a little bit of positive news. It certainly hasn't been resolved, but we're a little bit more hopeful than we were the last time we met.
And the design of that land itself, Michael, is still going to be that larger unit. It's not going to be broken up into the different smaller parcels that they originally provided.
No, it's not. If you remember, we incorporated that as like that final land area as part of the development agreement.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was on.
Yeah, it was good. And then we've added a little bit to Trolley Brook Trail. I think we painted the crosswalk, just a couple little touch up items there. Jen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No.
Okay. So with moving on to downtown, I don't even want to say anything about the weather, but as long as they can, Geosio is doing work, again, primarily to get all the underground stuff done. They're also working on the mast foundations for the new traffic lights. So if you see like some temporary asphalt berms and some big concrete structures, that's actually going to be the foundation for the mast arms for the traffic lights. So they're trying to put those in too. Again, I just want to reiterate, I appreciate everybody's patience in the community. It's it's not a smooth ride, metaphorically or literally. So public safety in Mendez School. Jen, do you want to update everybody on public safety and where we are with that? Give my voice a rest.
What's that?
Give
Sorry.
my voice a rest.
Sure, I can do that for sure. So they're continuing to working on framing and trying to close in the building so that they can continue to work through the winter months. They'll be working on the roof, and the green roof will hopefully start in the next couple of weeks. They'll have to prep that. That requires obviously the weather to cooperate a little bit, and they'll continue to work through the winter months, and hopefully you'll start to see a lot more movement in the spring. But they'll move most of the work inside once they close that in. They'll be installing windows. Right now it's all temporary windows, and hopefully we're working with Eversource for a gas connection. Again, we have to wait, sort of keep our fingers crossed with the weather, because it is working in the streets. So they're working with DPW to see if it's feasible given where we are in the calendar.
Okay. And then with regards to Mendez School, obviously,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Before we move on to Mendez, can we just talk a little bit about, I know folks have seen some of the protesters outside the public safety building, and I just think we should address that.
Okay.
What has happened and what the plan is.
So what is happening is that there was a drywall contractor, GL Contracting, that was on the job. And the workers have been complaining that they have not been paid. So the employees of GL have been claiming that they have not been paid. And even though they're not unionized, the union has gotten involved to help advocate on their behalf to make sure that they are paid. So what our responsibility is, our legal and fiduciary responsibility, is to make sure that CTA, and actually it's really our project manager, but is to make sure that CTA is paying the sub, which is GL as a company, what they're owed, and also making sure that they're being paid prevailing wages. And that's done through assigning certified payroll and showing to Vertex that, yes, they have been paid prevailing wage. There was some confusion as to whether or not CTA actually, in fact, had made payments to GL. So obviously, if they had not made payments to GL could not pay their employees. So we've gone back and looked through the register. CTA has also provided copies of cash checks showing that they have paid the invoices that they have been sent. They have paid GL the invoices that they have been sent. And from our perspective, where the issue now lies is with GL in their management, if you will, and making sure that they pay their employees. And I believe that's more of a discussion, or the Attorney General's office is really more of a venue there. I have been a little bit disappointed with the union. I will probably start talking to them a little bit more strongly about the fact that if they are truly concerned with making sure that the employees of GL are being paid, then they should be protesting actually at GL's offices, not our job site. Now, I think we all know, and if you don't, I think this is important information, that this union has had issues with CTA before. And I am hoping that the union is not exploiting these workers as a way to basically try to hammer CTA. Again, I think if if the union is really concerned about making sure the workers of GL are being paid, they would actually be going to GL and making sure that, you know, that company is paying their employees.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clearly, yeah, clearly the the most important part about this is that, you know, we have workers that are not being paid. And I think we all share, the concern that and the support. If it needs to go through the route of the Attorney General, then that's what it should be. But, you know, as Michael explained, we've got a legal, a fiduciary, and a moral responsibility to make sure that those monies have been paid from our perspective, and then the general contractor has made their payments as well. I think one of the dynamics at play here is that CTA was formerly a union company and left the union environment, I believe, not that long ago. So, that adds to some of the dynamic that goes on between the union and the general contractor. But, I think, Jen and Michael have been pretty vigilant with, getting all the information, and make sure that if there's any gaps there, then we can address it. So.
Yeah.
Do we
Thank
know
you,
if they actually
Michael and
were
Stephen.
paid or not, or what?
Yes.
What's the,
Yeah. So we actually went back and we asked CTA to show us the copies of the invoices and their register, and then also copies of the checks. And so they provided that to us.
no, I meant the actual payroll to the employees that say they never got paid.
Well, we don't have visibility into that. I mean, they're claiming that they're not. We haven't necessarily had any conversations with GL's management because I think, I'm not necessarily sure they've just run off, but they're actually off the job now. GL as a company is off the job. But I think, what Steve said, and I didn't say, but I want to reiterate is, we want to make sure that these workers get paid too. That's not right. And so we've been able, or as much as we're able to assist, we would help with any type of investigation or anything like that to this.
But to answer your question, Brandy, in addition to that, there's a thought out there that, we're holding back payments for whatever reason, and it's our fault that these people haven't been paid, which is not true at all. Like what Michael just said, GL is holding back their payments for whatever reason. They're holding back on their employees. That's between GL and their employees and the union, not with CTA, not us. We've been paying the bills, and we will continue to do that. And I agree with Stephen. We've had this discussion before. You do your work, you get paid. Being a former union president for 8 years, I have to tell you something that it didn't sit well by me. Seeing those protesters out there for not getting paid. So no. So those questions were definitely asked, and we're keeping a keen eye on this scenario as well.
Well, you'd think that they must be violating wage and hour laws and prevailing wage.
And you know what? That's where the AG's office is going to come into play with that route.
That's right.
Actually, interestingly enough, I think a couple of weeks ago, the AG's office actually fined a couple of companies for violating the wage laws and paying employees on public jobs. So, it's good to know that there's a watchdog in the Attorney General's office that's watching out for these workers.
It's nothing. One of the more, I think, deplorable byproducts of this is, whether it's the union or whether it's residents who exploit the misfortunes of workers to make a case or make a point of view. So, hopefully the Attorney General, responds in a timely fashion. And, think about it, what worse time of the year than Christmas to have this situation going on, right?
Yeah. Well, it's sad.
So thank you for
making sure that we're doing everything we can on our end to ensure that they do get paid. So I think that's very important. So thank
Well, we
you.
have to thank Jen and her hound dog abilities to follow up on it and, take a bite out of crime per se, and make sure people are getting paid. And it's not something on our end that we're not doing inappropriately, but we're following every proper procedure that needs to get done. And I hope the townspeople will realize that.
Yeah, just one last note. I know, we're not immune to criticism, obviously, and I think we accept that. But if we collectively, as management and a board, if we collectively care about these workers, and we're not just paying lip service to that, we actually care about them, we will start ratcheting up the heat on the union to actually put their efforts into things that will actually result in these workers getting paid. And I think we will all need to be vocal about that. So I just want to make that last point.
Very valid point, Michael. Thank you. And thank you for
Michael.
asking that question, Brandy, because it needed to be addressed. Thank you.
I had the same thought, Brandy. You beat me to it.
Well, I was going to comment on it, but ladies first, so we let it go. All right, are we good on that one? 126. How are we doing on that?
Well, I'll just cover the Mendez School quickly.
Okay, real quick. I'm sorry.
So, as you know, site work has certainly begun. They've started land clearing. They've also started a bit of rock crushing, which leads to a lot of noise. So, I just want to encourage people, neighborhoods or neighbors, especially in abutters, that we'll enforce the noise bylaws to the best of our ability. But even if something's legal, if there's something that we can do as a project team and as a community to help mitigate some of the impacts, just feel free to reach out to us and let us know. Actually, let me just say, reach out to Paul Kendall, and he'll definitely work tirelessly to help with that. I mentioned that because I did notice on our meeting earlier tonight, we had a neighbor on, and so I'm just assuming that might have been what he wanted to talk about, but that's pretty much the rough view of that project.
Michael, has the issue been that they're starting earlier than 7 o'clock?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean, our operations are well within the guidelines, well within the bylaws and the guidelines. It's still annoying though for some people. If you're stuck at home all day, and I don't know if you've heard that hoe ram go, but it can be a little disconcerting. So
and some of them are right on it. I mean, I remember when they were doing the work, Steve, I don't know if you remember it, but up on Chestnut Street, and they didn't have that much, but you hear the noise, and
yeah, you can hear it. It's short-term pain for long-term gain.
Long-term gain.
That's
Yep.
really how you have to look at it.
Exactly.
And I will tell you, just to piggyback on that, Joe and I paid a visit to the neighbor that's directly abuts the public safety building just before Christmas. And, first time I met her, Joe, and, just a wonderful lady. And just, as far as the project goes, I mean, just super supportive. And if there's anybody that's had, kind of chaos in her environment, it's this woman.
For sure. I mean, she heard that 24/7. And that she's been very gracious throughout the entire process, and we greatly appreciate her ability to take a nice ride and go to her church and be thankful. So
yeah.
So thank you again, Barbara. We appreciate everything that you're doing for us as well. Okay. Now we're going to go to 126.
126. Yeah, so it looks like they've buttoned up a lot of the road work, but it does look like they are starting to try to work on some of the retaining walls, which was their plan in order to expedite as much as possible. The work that's happening. So in the winter months when they can't necessarily do the road work, they're looking at doing some of the wall work and everything like that. And I think their goal is really to try to wrap up that section, that southern section of 126 by the end of 23 or 22. I'm sorry.
Michael, it looks like they did some nice some painting and some barrels for the intersection coming out of Spyglass. So
yeah,
that makes it easier for the residents, because I heard a couple people complaining. They're like, I have people coming at me the wrong way because of how some of it was.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like it's gotten better.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to put more signage, more directional indications there, because you're right, Yolanda, people were having a hard time. Also, the other thing they're going to work on in 2022 is hopefully finishing up that realignment of Algonquin with Harvard. So that's another section too. So that project is moving along. So the Valentine project, earlier tonight, actually right before a meeting, I emailed a few pictures of the cabling that was done. Again, it's not necessarily the most exciting stuff, but I just wanted to update you all of the fact that we actually have done the cabling. Just to remind everybody on the board or whoever's watching, what our approach has been is we're going to cable and secure the framework of the barn to get us through the winter, with the intention of dismantling the barn and reassembling it, using the pieces that we can after putting in a new foundation. So the first phase of that has been completed. I do think they're going to do a little bit more work, but the majority of the cabling work has been done. As you can see, it's pretty intricate and elaborate. I mean, I'm trying to make cabling sound exciting, so it's a pretty tough task. So.
Michael, just on the Valentine estate, have you heard at all from Lisa Mead about the draft restrictions that we had sent over, a while back? I know that the plan was that, we wanted to take Lisa's feedback, bring that back to to a subcommittee meeting, and then bring it to the board for consideration. So I didn't know if you had a timeline from Lisa on that.
So Lisa's advised me she'll get comments back to me by the end of this week.
Oh, that's great.
Good. All right, then Brandy, we could, we'll have to post, once we have that, we get a chance to review it, then we'll post another meeting.
Yep, sounds perfect.
Okay, good.
So, and actually, one final thing, I think at the last subcommittee meeting, there was some discussion as to whether or not the board had the ability to sign the conservation restriction, or if it needed to go to town meeting. I did get clarification that in this particular instance, the way the town meeting vote was worded, the board does have the ability to sign the conservation restriction. So it wouldn't need town meeting approvals. So one follow-up piece.
So does that mean we can actually hold the restriction for the property?
We would have to find a holder. So, but we would have to we're a party to it.
Okay.
So we would be entering into an agreement with the holder.
With somebody holding the okay.
Or if we do go the route of trying to remove Article 97 or presenting that as an option to people, and going down that road, the town could be the holder if we ended up selling or leasing the property. It would just be reversed.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification, Mike.
Okay. And then if you want to just move on to town manager.
Yep, you're up. Go ahead.
I'll just give you an update on where we are numbers wise, because we did meet today. Please give me 1 minute here. So right now we had, well, as of this afternoon, we had 363 open cases. And that's if you use the prior measurement that the CDC was using of like a 10-day quarantine period. If you look at the new 5-day quarantine period guidance, we have 129 cases. Just to point out that this doesn't include at-home tests. And so what people, I'm not necessarily sure how they've arrived at this number, but I guess the standard is you add 15% to those numbers to account for at-home test positive cases. With regards to the school specifically, we have 150 students that are positive. We have about a 17% absentee rate right now of students and staff. We have about 30 staff that are positive. And then also, as I mentioned earlier tonight, we did make the decision to go to appointment only in our municipal buildings starting Monday and going till at least January 28th. Hopefully that will be the end. That's when it looks like, you know, most of the surge or the peak will die down. So our programming will be going to virtual. The library will be able to bring people in by appointment. Same thing with the community center. We'll still be able to provide rides for people, rides for seniors, and then also at town hall. So it's, never thought we'd be back here, but we're back here. So
it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do not, we've been checking around with other towns. They haven't taken as drastic a measure, but actually one of our thoughts was that if we do that, we actually could shift Ed a lot of Ed's work more towards the schools to help them as well.
Mike, just some thoughts about the Ed Berman situation. And I think, you as a manager, I had a tough decision to make there. So I don't think it's an easy or simple decision to make. And I think you're on the right track generally. One thing in thinking about this process, though, we did talk about ARPA funds and maybe getting temporary help. And, there are some, I think I sent you an email about, asking the governor for the National Guard assistance. And, I think Anna suggested co-op student. I mean, I think what we're looking at is not a clinical issue, but an administrative need. And, I guess I would encourage you and your staff, and maybe this is something Lisa can take on as an HR thing, is to try to get some temporary administrative help over the next several months and working with the schools, because, we had ARPA funds and so did they. I don't know how they're using their funds, but if all this administrative work is needed, and Ed's been doing the job of multiple people, which I think is somewhat unreasonable, it sounds like we need to at least get some temporary help working with the schools to weather this. And, I guess I would encourage you to, and I think your point about Ed being a specialized police officer and especially a police sergeant, it's not something you can just get somebody like that off, but you can, I think, get administrators, public health people, public administrators, students, graduate students, consultants to kind of fill in there and work on that angle. So I would encourage, that kind of direction. I certainly understand the need to have. One question I had about Ed, he is a sergeant. So is part of what he's doing supervising as well?
Yes.
Or is it? Yeah. And I think that's important. If we have young police officers, they should have supervision. And, bad things can happen when you don't have good supervision. So, anyway.
Well, that was one of the main reasons that was presented to me that Ed was important, was that he is a sergeant. He is a ranking officer. And so that's one of the reasons why it would be important to have him perform some, we'll just call them patrol functions. Rob, to your other point, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I thought I did, but I might not have. One of the topics of discussion today was whether or not we want to outsource or contract with a company to do contact tracing.
Yeah, you did mention that. I think that's a good move.
Yeah, Southborough does that. Holliston does that. We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish here. So I think we're certainly open to figure out what we can.
Michael, do you know those communities are they using the same company? I mean, is this the kind of thing where we could sort of group together and go, okay, company, you know, you're not doing much in each community, but by getting all these communities together, we can get some better pricing. They can get more consistent work. I mean, is that something we could look into?
We could, Yolanda. I didn't ask that question specifically today. What I did ask Ed to do was to contact them and see who they're using,
Okay.
how much it's costing them, you know, what type of services that they're providing, what they're getting for it.
And to that, and I think, you know, maybe can we get somebody in to help Ed to be like his deputy, you know, and carry on things. And maybe that's a graduate student. Maybe that's, you know, somebody from the National Guard assigned by the governor to help us administratively. You know, things like that.
He does more than administrative work. There was too, Rob. I mean, he administers shots and everything else. I mean, he's a registered nurse and stuff. And
I didn't realize he was doing clinical.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he's doing some
doing it all.
Well, that's a nursing resource to add to it.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And so, I mean, like, you know, Amy Childs, who was on earlier today, she's a, she does nursing work and
nurse practitioner
with that. Yeah, nurse practitioner. I think.
Well,
yeah.
nurses are. Did you say Ed's a registered nurse?
Yeah.
He
Oh
is.
my gosh.
And he drives a bus. So
Jack of all trades.
yeah, you know,
Okay.
it's funny. Yeah, I mentioned this when we were talking about this earlier tonight. I think, you know, in hindsight, one of the things I probably should have done was not let Ed take on so much, you know, and you know, he's got all of this stuff in his head, and it probably would have been better to kind of spread that out. And it's,
you know, hindsight's 2020, Michael, and Ed's the kind of guy who, when you give him a problem, he's going to solve it, and he's going to jump in and not only figure out how to do it, but actually do it.
Right.
Which is why he has been so great in that position.
the ironic. Oh, sorry.
The fact that, you know, they said, well, he's the one who's going and pulling kids off buses when they test positive. I'm like, my initial thought was, why is Ed doing that? Why aren't they reaching out to the schools and someone from the school going and doing that, you know? But
The schools are doing that sometimes too. It's not just Ed. I find it completely ironic that people, you know, thought I was crazy for putting him in this role in the first place, and then now we shift a few hours somewhere else, and it's, you know, people are very, very concerned about that, and I can understand. Everybody's just tired. Everybody's just exhausted, and yeah, it's just a tough situation. You know, if we weren't down literally 33% of our police force,
right.
Literally 33%, you know, between the vacancies that we have and the people that are out, you know, this wouldn't be so, I think, necessary. And I think even still, like I said, Ed's probably doing half of his patrol work, his patrol shifts that he's supposed to be doing. Probably half of that's related, you know, been devoted to COVID too. So it's not like we're just dropping, Ed's just dropping COVID.
We good? Thank you.
Good.
All right. So next on your town manager's report is the FY 2022 budget review.
Yes. So it's a lot of information. I think if you had a chance to just scan through, I think you'll see nothing really pops out. Obviously, you know, I would encourage you to look at it over the next couple of weeks also. And if you have something that catches your eye, please feel free to reach out to me. But, you know, we seem to be going on track. Brittany actually sent me the revenue report today too, and I hadn't had a chance to look at it, but things are looking pretty good there.
I'm sorry, Mike, I don't mean to interrupt, but I am. What is the percentage of the budget that has been utilized to date?
Oh, in total, Joe?
In total. Yeah, in total.
I don't know if I have that number off the top of my head, but if you give me 1 minute.
Because it should be, I mean, it's the halfway point of the fiscal year, so it's just kind of
And
curious.
Michael, you've given us a more consolidated report in the past.
I have, I know I mentioned in my email today.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have to admit, I mean, I look at budgets, but my eyes glazed over as I tried to look at this in detail when I got it.
Eunice.
I thought I gave
I like
Yeah.
I like this presentation. This digging into this a little bit more.
No, I like digging in. It was just,
Yeah.
it was a little tough. But
It's a lot.
I thought people were gonna go down and put a hold on certain line items and ask for
Yeah. I want
clarification.
details.
So,
I move that you keep sending this version to Steve. And the rest of us get the summary.
Well, in the spirit of that, after Michael answers Joe's question, I have a question. So
okay. So
Michael,
Joe,
I was just more worried you were going to go line by line through that tonight at like quarter to 10.
oh no.
No, I wouldn't do that to you, Brendan. It's
The
just, we've been
highlights.
on together 2 nights in a row. Not happening.
So Joe, we're at about 35% of the appropriated budget right now. So I know, so that raises some
wow.
eyebrows, right?
yes,
Yeah.
But you have to remember, we've got probably some larger payments on our fixed costs that are coming up, like debt payments as well as insurance payments. So don't be too alarmed
Okay.
by that.
So I'm just going to pull out one
That's 6
one
months?
item that
Wow.
kind of stood out for me, and that was the sewer enterprise fund. And
Okay.
it's the total sewer enterprise fund. They're at 24.4% of their budget, and it is the same reasons. Do they have bonds and issuings that are coming up for payment, or it just seems at this stage a kind of a low percentage of usage?
Yeah, it's just trying to see what the big one was. So to catch my eye too.
But this is supposed to be the first 6 months. Is that?
Mm.
But it's kind of early in January to have all your
Yeah,
December
it's actually
expenses.
it's actually through period
It says 6 on the report. Is that?
yeah, it's actually through the end of December.
Yeah,
Steve,
but there must be all sorts of bills out there that you haven't got yet or haven't
Yeah.
put in the system. So
Yes, Steve, I can't
That's okay. It's
can't
just
really
something
answer
that's
that
stuck
question
out.
right now.
Because a lot of the other accounts seem to be very close to 50%, give or take, and
Yeah.
which kind of make sense. But this one kind of don't belabor it, just kind of jumped out.
well, payroll will be close to the real number, but other stuff, you never know what people are going to send you.
That's
Right.
well, because then there's another bunch that are at 100%
Yeah, so a lot of times
used.
what those are revenue related. And so there's zero actually is the budget. So I'll take the original appropriation. So, let's take for example, well, if you look at page 5, when you get like sewer permits, it's towards the bottom, you'll see like original appropriation.
Where am I going to see? Oh, okay, never mind. I see the page
yeah.
number now.
Yeah, and it's you'll see the original appropriation, but then you'll see some credits to it. And so that's why you have 100%.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So, but I'll dig into it a little bit more.
I'm sorry I asked a tough question. I didn't mean to.
No, it's that's
Thank
what we're here for. Uh-oh, Yolanda, I can't tell if Yolanda is scrutinizing or she needs glasses.
I'm squinting a little. I have a slightly
Oh,
different
okay.
setup today, so I'm squinting to see it. But even some of these expenses are at 100. Anyway, I like I said, I did not get to look at it in detail between when I got it and we're meeting. So I will take a look at it, Michael, and I'm sure I'll give you a phone call.
Sure.
We haven't chatted in a while, so.
Yeah, we haven't. So that's we'll talk about sewer funds.
Oh boy.
Hey, Michael, where is the Framingham assessment on this? for payment on the sewer assessment. I've gone through it. I've looked for it at least 3 times, and I don't see it at all.
So
Framingham?
Yes.
Yeah, it's here. Framingham, IMA.
Yeah, you'll see it's 6144-57050. So it's 1.1.
I got it.
Million.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So-
I've got it. Okay. Thank you.
So that
What-
shows
what
100.
page, Joe?
It's page 5. This
page
one you're
5.
looking-
Oh, okay. It's part of that same one. Okay.
So you'll see that it shows 100%, even though we've only spent 766 because we've encumbered and so basically held
Oh,
aside.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Because if you're encumbering it, it shows the full amount. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So same thing with the MWRA, which is the other big expense for us.
Makes sense. Do you want to talk about 2023, or were you just thinking about the same thing?
No, 2023, I just wanted to give you an update on that. So we have received most of the department's budgets. So Brittany has received those. So we'll start the process of assembling that and putting it all together. And then Brittany is going to be, developing an overall budget. I did want to say one of the things that we're doing this year that we haven't done in previous years. Actually, I think I tried to do it my first year as finance director, but we're going to incorporate performance metrics into the budget. So in performance measures, so looking at things like outputs, hopefully we can get to some outcome measures as well, because that's really, I think, what's the most important. But
And are we tying those to anything, or is it just for the metrics to see how we're doing?
so I think we're going to look at a lot of output metrics right now, which, basically talks about, so for the library, how many books, what's our circulation compared to previous years on,
Okay.
Electronic media or books, or how many, health permits have we issued or violations that we issued. And I think, what we'll do is we'll start tying it into a larger, bigger picture as that comes into plan.
Okay.
So
It's always good to know what exactly we're doing from year to year. And when when the town people say, well, why did your budget go up? Well, because we're realizing we're doing more of this or that. So to have that, I think that's a good idea. Thank you for doing that.
So that'll be another part of the budget. So that might boost us up to 450 pages.
And where are the schools at with their process and, in regards to what they're going to be doing? And do we need to have a discussion about what we want to, it's January and town meeting warrant and budgets are going to be here before we know it. So what discussion should we be having as a board with the school committee? I'm sure you're in conversation with Jim already, but what public larger discussion should the boards be having together?
So I think the school committee on their next agenda is going to have their preliminary discussion. And the last message that Jim and I sent to each other just related to budget was, things were looking good in terms of compared to the budget allocation that we had, but he had a couple of large special eding, costs that came in kind of at the last minute. So I think they need to get
where the special ed fund helps him.
Well, yeah, so certainly that would help cover it for this year. So for next year, if you remember, what we try to do is if we know what the cost for an out of district placement is going to be, we go ahead and budget for it and account for it, instead of just kind of say we're going to kick it down the road and use the special education stabilization fund. That fund is for if you have new expenses that come in during the year, that would shift the budget. We can use that sped stabilization fund to help balance that out.
It's also to help cover the difference between what we budget and what the state gives us as well, right? Right, because that changes.
It does help with that. But in terms of a larger discussion with the schools, I think one of the things we do need to think about is changing that special education stabilization fund and either looking at raising the cap or look at maybe having access to it a little earlier in the process.
Okay.
I do think that needs to be part of the discussion.
Okay.
And that should be one, I think, with the school committee and the finance committee and the select board.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's part of a tri-board meeting.
Yeah, I think we should see where the schools, where their initial discussion takes them, and then that's where we start sharpening our pencils.
Yep.
Start looking at things. I will say, Keith Tech, John Evans roped me into being the municipal liaison for the collective bargaining agreements. But it does look like we have less students at Keith than we did in the previous year. So that usually bodes well for us.
Yeah.
And, depends on how much the costs go up, though, to see that will determine whether or not we see a lower assessment number.
Motion to go past 10 o'clock.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes to do this. So is there a second?
Or we shut it down right now.
I was just going to say, have a nice night, everyone. Come on, Rob.
Oh, I did second it. Yes.
Oh, you did second it. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we can continue.
You can move on into board reports now.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your reports and for updating everybody. And Jen, thank you for doing the same when it came to public safety building and other matters as well. So with that, starting the new year, Ms. Kinsman, would you like to lead us off? You are muted. There you go.
I needed to unmute myself and I couldn't find my mouse. So, so what I wanted to talk about tonight was a few weeks ago before the holidays, as part of Leadership Metro West, we met over at MWRTA, the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, to talk about regionalization. And Yolanda came as far with MAPC to talk about the regional collaborative as well. But really was really interesting because I have seen the little white buses for MWRTA for years, but never really understood what they meant and how they worked and what the process looked like. And so, I'm taking a page out of Rob's book and going big on the public transportation route. And during our meeting, we were talking about some of the routes and about the on-demand service that basically MWRTA offers to elderly and to disabled folks. Right now with CARES money, everything, there's no charge for folks to be able to utilize MWRTA. And so, as we were sitting there, it's like my brain clicks in and, I'm thinking about ways that we can get the word out to our residents to really talk about public transportation and possibly think about ways that we can utilize and leverage MWRTA. We talk about the last mile, getting people to train stations. I'm thinking about, folks in the condo communities and seeing if we can, once we come out of COVID, how we can help emphasize folks utilizing MWRTA to get to the train station. And I just think it's a very underrepresented service that we have as part of our community, and it's fantastic. And Ed Berman, we were talking about Ed all day today. Ed is our member on their board, and he's fabulous. So after we met at MWRTA, I picked Ed's brain. Also talked to Ed Carr over at MWRTA. And so so I'm gonna reach out to our communications folks and see if we can put together some education for our residents to let them know what services there are available, and think about other ways that we can potentially leverage MWRTA. Because I think I came out of there like super excited. In fact, between the presentation that Ed Carr did and then the presentation from MAPC and Yolanda, it inspired our class project for Leadership Metro West. So we're really utilized, and you'll love this too, Rob, because it'll combine two things you love: transportation, public transportation, and trails. So more to come on that. But
Very good.
But so I'm just
Yeah, Ed did this trail down from downtown to his bus station. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, the
And that's
So
been-
Brandy,
It's been done before, the letting people know. I remember when they added a specific service, they actually had an event at the library that WACA and Around the Clock talked about. So it's definitely one of those things that we have to keep educating people about, because you hit people and then they forget, or you get new people. So yeah, it's definitely one of those great things we have.
yeah. So Brandy, in the past, you know, Ed Carr is just he's a tremendous man and a tremendous asset. And but in the past, we've requested special service that they've come out and done for us. And the last one that was involved in was a woman that lived in Ashland House wanted to get around. She was well in her 90s. So Ed sent, they come out, they evaluated the route, they put it into place. And it was probably in place that we painted signs for bus stops and all of that, and it just unfortunately wasn't utilized sufficiently. So after a period of time, they dissolved it. But it is a tremendous asset, and so I applaud you for getting involved and being excited about it. It really is.
They do great.
And Ed's just a great guy.
Yeah.
He's retiring though. I think in
Yep.
June we're losing him. So
Yep. So we have 6 months. So although they'll continue without missing a beat, but
there was at one point there was conversation, just like, because he and his organization took over the Framingham train station and turned it into what it is. And at that point there was discussion. I know, Steve, you went to a meeting or two about
twice to the State House and
about
and
MWRTA
Michael was there. Yeah,
taking over
and,
the Ashland train station, and that I think it just fell apart.
They weren't interested in it.
No.
It's such a, at the time, up until COVID, our train station is fully occupied.
Right.
And so it's a moneymaker.
Yep.
We would just hope that they would put a little of that money into maintenance and repair and upgrading, but
I would love to see a pedestrian crossover like the town of Framingham has, with the elevators and things that they have in Framingham.
My understanding is that was offered to us, and the people who were involved at the time didn't want it.
Yeah, wasn't Rob on the board then?
I don't know who, but
I have no recollection of any such.
One other thing I wanted to just make a point on too with MWRTA is that they have a compressed natural gas station there. And in conversations with Ed Berman, he said, if we as a community, as we replace like DPW vehicles, if we go the CNG route, we can utilize as a part of the Metro West group that utilizes MWRTA, we can utilize that station as well. So that's an additional resource that we have available to us. So, just as something down the road, if we're replacing diesel, that might be something we might want to keep in mind too. So just throwing it out there, but exciting. It was good. So hopefully I'll get people to at least know what it is, because again, like I've seen these little white buses forever and never really knew what kind of value they brought to our community. So so thank you to the folks at MWRTA for all that they do, because it's great work. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Brandy. I'm just going to go right across the line. Yolanda, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So first of all, I want to thank Joe and Trisha and Mike and Peter for the event we had last night, for the planning board, for that reappointment. I was chatting a little bit with Trisha afterwards, And this is more to the community. Our design review committee is looking for members. If you have experience, you have a design background, or you want to get more involved, they are looking for volunteers to help review the look and feel of new building projects. And as was mentioned, it is an advisory capacity. But Tricia, we chatted today, so they are looking for more members. So if you're watching this and you're interested in design review, reach out to Tricia and fill out a talent bank form. The other thing, our Lions breakfast for tomorrow has been canceled, as has the meat raffle that the Lions usually have on Saturday due to health concerns because of COVID. Thank you to Steve for sort of bringing that forward as one of the breakfast subcommittee members. And then I think I mentioned this earlier, the Metro West Regional Collaborative, either as part of our next meeting on the 27th or a little bit afterwards, we're going to have a discussion with our communities about the DHCD new regulations. So once I have that timing, if there's anyone who's interested, I'll let you know if you want to be part of that discussion. And then I'm still looking forward to the MMA conference at the end of January. Always good stuff. So that's it.
Thank you, Yolanda. Mr. Scheer, you're up next, sir.
Sure. I think we all got the email from, speaking of the planning board, from Anna Esmaniski about, and she's, as I think we all know, she recused herself from this apartment project on 126 that she's in a butter. But she did have, I thought, really an interesting proposal. And I think, did everyone else get that email? I don't know if she just sent it to me and Michael, or, oh, you guys didn't get it. Okay. So, yeah, I think it's worth looking at. And I I haven't talked to Michael about it, but I know he's been involved in talking to that developer. But basically, Anna's proposal is using a piece of the parking lot, unused parking lot at Shaw's, where I think the town, we have some sort of structure or use it for salt storage or something. I'm not sure. DPW is still using it, but she just had an idea for talking to the developer about using that unused piece of parking lot to make a neighborhood park. Kind of like, sort of like, because that side of the town has very little except for Cadillac, which we're still developing, which isn't that far away. But this would be a really accessible to people from the new apartments, from the condos, from the assisted living facility and the daycare there. They would just have a nice little park. So if people know what I'm talking about, at the end of the Shaw's Plaza, there's really an underutilized piece of asphalt, really is what it is. And then maybe we could do something creative with the developer and the owner of the Shaw's Plaza, whoever that is, to create a little pocket neighborhood park. So I thought that was, an interesting proposal and well worth pursuing. So,
aren't there kind of neighborhood parks and open space places within the condo developments?
I think they have. There's a tennis court, I think. Yeah.
There's a couple of
there's not a lot of parkland per se.
No, I'd have to take a ride around, but I'm pretty sure there's these open space or common spaces that are.
Yeah, there's that kind of pond area. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think it's more than just the condos. It's kind of, it creates a buffer and kind of a nice area around there, which we don't really have.
Yes,
but take a look around.
When 126 is done, and you have the multimodal paths, and you have the trees, and you have the whole area is going to look a lot nicer. It's not going to look like it looks like now, and people will be able to walk to Cadillac Paint.
Right.
Just to remind people, the first developer who had taken an interest in this parcel had actually incorporated a public park as part of his original design. So I don't think it's too out of question to ask this current developer for something similar.
That's great. And you think that would be kind of on his parcel as opposed to the nearby one, or?
Yeah, I think he had planned, the initial rendering actually had it in the front of the development, so accessible from the sidewalk. and everything.
Oh, that
You know, I
agrees.
think it's a good kind of thing to try to incorporate as we build all these housing developments, try to put aside green space or supply green space. Even if we have a nice bike trail that people can get on, green space is important nearby, I think. So, yeah, that'd be great, Mike, if we could work something out like that. Because I know we did other, you know, there's other agreements we're doing with this developer, which
So, you know, I have seen reference to that, but just to clarify, I have not signed off on anything. I have not necessarily seen everything. I know that, you know, this developer has had conversations with our water and sewer department about infrastructure. But from my perspective, that's not a linkage type of product, Rob. To, you know, that's just infrastructure that this guy needs to support.
oh yeah, if he's causing something, he needs to pay for it, right? Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that, because I did see that in the email, and I just want to make sure.
Well, it would be nice, you know, I think it would be nice to review your discussions with this developer, because usually you do that with us, right? That we kind of talk about what's going on, and
I do.
I just haven't heard it.
Yeah, I have not had a discussion with this developer. I've kind of taken more of an approach, just a little bit more laid back, and not necessarily as involved in the beginning, because just never seemed to work out well that way. But
we are. I mean, we did get him to commit to the 25%, right? Or
well, he is going to do the 25%, and that's what he's proposing.
Rob, if I could interject, the developer came in front of the Affordable Housing Trust about 2 months ago with the proposal, and the first thing that he provided to us was that they were willing to do the 25% affordability aspect of it. I asked him the question about a green space park area, very similar to the park that was discussed with the original developer who came in front of and spoke with Michael, and he had something similar, but not exactly the way it was first developed, and it would be in front of the property, but he was going to take on responsibility for it. So that's going to raise a question as to, one, who's going to maintain it, and where's the liability fall. So we need to just make sure that those questions are addressed and answered before anything is approved.
And I think if you look at, if he builds it, then it's on his property, and then what does he do? Cede it to the town if we want it. The other thing, I think Anna's thing is a separate parcel that we'd have to make a deal.
Well, something
then
needs
it would
to
be a
addressed.
public park.
Right. Yeah. Well, and at the same token, if it's part of that particular site project, or in addition to, Anna has to be very careful because she's in the butter.
Oh yeah, she's recused herself.
Yeah,
she's
well, I
acting
know
as a
she's also
citizen.
making recommendations, so you have to be careful.
Yeah,
with
yeah, as a citizen, yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's good. Anything else, Robert?
Oh, yeah, I just, tomorrow's January 6th, the 1-year anniversary of the insurrection, the attack on our Capitol, and an attack on our democracy. And, there's a vigil tomorrow night at 6:00 in Framingham to stand out for democracy. And I intend to be there. And I just wanted to let people know about that. I think it's important that we all are aware and alert about efforts that are in place that I believe really challenge the American democratic experience. This is not a local matter. I'm not concerned about our town or even our state, but I think nationwide there's some very disturbing trends. So just wanted to let people know about that.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Joe. So Yolanda, thanks for mentioning the cancellation of the breakfast tomorrow, and we'll do it. Obviously, we'll assess it month by month at this point in time. Hopefully, we're back to hosting a breakfast in February. But that another community center event that related to the by appointment only, we've been doing all through the COVID, we've been doing Monday lunch program. It initially started as grab and go, and it morphed into both grab and go and in-house dining. We're back to grab and go now. So for the foreseeable future, it will be Monday lunch, grab and go. And the only other thing I have is I was asked to participate in a feasibility study planning team by the Metro West Y, which I was very pleased to receive, and I intend to participate in that. We have a Zoom meeting tomorrow. It's a group, obviously Rick McPherson, the CEO of the Metro SY is heading it up. And there's a representative from each of the towns that are part of the Metro West Y area. And so I'm looking forward to participating in that and reporting back to the board as we do our work.
Thank you.
And that's my tune.
Really cool, the designs that they've gotten to, like 25% being on the board of the Y. They showed it to us at the last meeting. So I'm glad that you're involved with that, Steve. You're a good representative for our community. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Joe.
I appreciate it. Thank you all. I really don't have that much to report other than we have a public safety building meeting coming up next Tuesday. No, hold on.
The 18th, Joe.
The 18th, right? I was looking at my calendar too quick. On the 18th and on the 21st, we'll be meeting our first meeting of the year with the Affordable Housing Trust to go over some issues and continue the discussion of the inclusionary zoning bylaw that we've been talking about and trying to assimilate for the town as well. Other than that, I just want to do a quick update on our meeting with the planning board to fill the vacancy left by the resignation of a longtime planning board member, Joe Rubitone. I thought the process last night was a very fair and extremely transparent process. We had 4 extremely qualified candidates who filled out talent back forms expressing a desire to serve on the planning board. They were Marcello Aranja, Lucy Kaplan, Kevin McLean, and Pam McQuinlan. All of them had all the qualities and characteristics that would have been very beneficial if they became members of the planning board. After a very lengthy and process and with the deliberations from the planning board and our select board, Marcello Aranja is the full-time member, and Kevin McLean will be the associate member voted to the planning board. I would also like to thank Lucy and Pam for showing their continued interest in serving the town, and I hope that they continue this. We expressed that sentiment last night, but I want to do it again this evening. Please stay positive and please continue your volunteerism for the town in whatever capacity that may be. My final thoughts.
Well said, Joe, on that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. My final thoughts on the current status of the COVID-19 rise in the positive cases. I said it briefly today during our discussions. All we can do is ask for all of us to use common sense, not in just protecting ourselves, but our loved ones and also our neighbors, as well as everybody in our community. We're all in this together. Nobody is separated or not can avoid this. This is something that's going to happen. Like Diane said earlier this evening, if we wash our hands and wear a mask and what is needed to slow down the spread of this virus, then we should do this for the sake of all of us. It's surely better than the alternative. Remember, school is now back in session and we all travel to go to work or to other locations. Please be prepared for delays in school buses picking and dropping off students in the schools. Please use your patience and have an understanding that we need to have our children arrive safely and return safely home as well. So far, we've been very lucky with the mild weather that we have, except this weekend coming up. I know we were expecting some snow and some severe snow weather advisory. But we know what's awaiting us. Again, there's still a no parking ban in effect, no overnight parking from 2 a.m. to 5 p.m. And during a snowstorm, there is no parking on roadways at all. That is all I have to offer this evening. I'm glad to see everybody back. And now let us get back to work and to keep Ashland moving in a forward direction. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Voice vote, please.
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Vignani, aye. That's 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
All right,
Nice
thanks,
to see
everybody.
back.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
And
Jen.
stay safe.
Happy
and
New
healthy,
Year.
everybody. Good night, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Good night.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye now.